During the school trip, Touka and his teammates are summoned to another world. However, Touka was the only one with the lowest rank, E rank, an extremely low status compared to his classmates. Thus, the former mob character and abandoned hero will absolutely become the strongest devil as he advances and strikes back. Mimori Touka is staring at what is probably inevitable doom for him. He runs away from danger, but the monster is in pursuit. Lots of thoughts race through his mind, but none more than the obvious question. How exactly did he end up here? He remembers vividly. Who would forget the day that his class was summoned by the goddess Isis? She had previously summoned the class to a whole new world. She calls them chosen beings and says they are chosen for the task because they are heroes. But then, before she lets them do the task, she carries out a little task of her own. Based on the results of the aptitude test she made the class take, one person must be eliminated. Mimori Touka is the one who is called out. He's to be disposed of immediately. Touka barely has time to react before the goddess explains further. She tells them that they were summoned to the other world to defeat the Demon Lord. They needed to take the test so they could determine who is strong enough. There are 6 ranks available from highest to lowest: S rank, A rank, B rank, C rank, D rank, and E rank. The whole class took the aptitude test, but Touka is the only one with an E rank result. The goddess concludes that he would probably slow the higher ranked heroes down, and that's why she chose to get rid of him. Desperately, Touka pleads with the goddess for mercy. While he understands that he's never been the major character in a play, he still argues that disposing of him would be a terrible decision. He also points out that disposing of him would mean she would dispose of anyone the moment they aren't needed anymore. He expects that this would rile up his classmates and that they would argue in his favor. If only it were that easy. Touka's classmates are indifferent to what the goddess said. After all, they're not E-ranked warriors and it doesn't affect them. Touka just about loses all hope before someone finally comes to his rescue. Ayaka Sogo, an S-rank hero. Sogo argues that he shouldn't be disposed of as he never decided to become an E-rank hero. Touka is comfortable thinking everyone would surely be on his side now. It's a shocker when Vices sends the class leader flying with one move and then accuses Touka of affecting an S-rank warrior's mind. And just like that, the entire class begins to reject and make fun of Touka. It's almost as if they weren't classmates some time ago. The ruthless goddess rounds Touka up and is about to dispose of him. She asks for his last words. Touka, after a moment of anguish, defiantly raises his middle finger at the goddess, and so she disposes of him. Sometime later, Touka wakes up in what seems like a cave. He's still alive but is confused about what to do. Then he recalls the goddess talking about skills. She mentioned that everyone was given skills the moment they came in. He opens the status window to check his skills. Unfortunately, he doesn't realize the danger just behind him. When he sees the monster, he immediately runs as fast as his legs can allow. The initial plan is to locate others that were disposed of and form a group with them. He gives up on his plans when he notices the skeletons lying around. So he was put here to die? He checks the status window to see if any skill can save him from death. His current skills are sleep, paralysis, and poison. These are all level 1 skills, no wonder he was thrown away. As the monster approaches, he looks away and attempts a last gasp attack, using paralysis. It works as the monster is rooted to the spot. His skills don't seem so bad now. He even uses poison, which also works on the monster. After 1 hour under the poison, the monster dies. Taking the skeleton's coat, Touka decides to get stronger and explore this new world. After all, he has a point to prove and a certain goddess to take revenge on. Time passes and the revenge-seeking Touka finally starts to get the hang of the labyrinth. With his paralysis skill, he doesn't even have to come up close to the enemy. The only problem is that when they attack in numbers. Whether in singles or multiples though, Touka manages to defeat every monster that crosses his path. As for his abilities, he has successfully analyzed each of them and found a few things. Paralysis and sleep only last 1 hour, poison lasts till death, and the range of using these abilities is as long as 20 meters. He remembers the stats and realizes that he's leveled up. After his last battle with the monster, he feels a lot stronger but must check for himself. Then, Touka starts to think. He thinks about the ruthless goddess that condemned him to his fate. The more he remembers her, the angrier he gets. Even further down his train of thought, he remembers his parents and how badly they treated him. The neighbors couldn't even help him because his parents always seemed to be lurking around. Come to think of it, this isn't his first experience with hell. His entire life has been hell. Touka shrugs it off and is drawn back to reality. He realizes that his paralysis effect is running out of time. Then he has an idea. What if one combines sleep, paralysis, and poison effects? He decides to test it out and it works. This means he can now just stand still and finish off his enemies. As long as they are within his range, with his recent discovery, all the monsters start to look like bonus experience points. His parents, Vices. Touka can't stop thinking about people who don't deserve to live. Since they tried so hard to kill him, he resolves to train harder until he's faster and stronger. He checks the status window after it notifies him that he has leveled up. Looks like his skills are up to level 2 now. Touka ventures deeper into the labyrinth, also called the Ruins of Disposal. He stumbles across a big book which he glances through. Something captures his interest there. It's a page that says, "Beware of the Soul Eater." Could that be some sort of monster? Even without that page, the book seems so beneficial that Touka decides to take it. He asks for permission from the old sage, who would have replied if skeletons could talk, or were alive at least. While looking for the exit of the labyrinth, he finds a safe room. It doesn't feel comfortable, but he has no choice. He needs a way out as soon as possible, and he's also running low on food. This place looks like a man-made design structure, unlike the rest of the ruins. Touka wonders just how much time must have passed on the outside. He wouldn't have survived without his skills, no doubt about that. His skills keep growing day by day, and the more they grow, the more the things they can do increase. For example, his sleep paralysis and poison skills can now be used to target multiple opponents at once. As long as he can visualize opponents, he can use his skills on them. The only problem is when they attack through his blind spot. Then again, his instincts seem to be heightened after facing opponents that attack blind spots. Speaking of heightened senses, it was all he could do to dodge an incoming sting from a giant monster scorpion-like tail. It's not just a giant, it's also an undead with rotting flesh. Would his skills even work against this monster? Only one way to find out. It's almost as if he's enjoying this. Meanwhile, outside the ruins, there's one person in particular who misses Touka. Kashima Kobato remembers their good times. She remembers they once took a stray cat to see the vet. Here she confessed to being a weak coward, and Touka cheers her up, saying that being a weak, kind person is much better than being a scary maniac. Kobato is rudely interrupted by Ikasaba Asagi and what looks like her gang. Asagi tells them that S and A ranked heroes can do whatever they want. She suggests that the rest of the class form groups to increase their chances of survival. Of course, she doesn't fancy D-ranked Kashima that much. She just needs her beautiful body to attract boys that would protect them. Quite the plan, I must say. Asagi reveals that she's not trusting the goddess to send them back home. After all, the goddess selfishly abducted the kids without prior notice. She leaves Kashima alone to ponder about Touka, and whether she needs to stop being such a kind coward. Meanwhile, Touka is reading the sage's book back at the ruins. He learns that his name was Angelin Birthrad. He was called the Great Sage by some and Dark Hero by others. He was sent to the ruins because he had become an eyesore to the ruthless Vices. That means that the labyrinth isn't a place to dispose of E-ranks, but also to dispose of those who inconvenience her. This lady is pure evil according to Touka. He sets back out, remembering he always wanted to be a kind person. Yet here he is, killing so many monsters and not caring. He sees a door and concludes that an exit should be close by. He manages to find an exit, but just in front of it is a gigantic head that looks asleep. Touka has played enough games to know that this is usually a trap. He reads the statue's skill, something he learned he could do recently, and found out that it's a very powerful one. So he decides to attack from distance with paralysis. Before he can call out the move, the statue sends a beam that he barely dodges. Wait a minute, this guy is no ordinary statue. He's the Soul Eater. Touka hides in the corner to analyze the situation. Every time he's tried to use his skill, the Soul Eater used his beam first. It's almost as if his moves are being predicted. For sure, the Soul Eater must be the boss of the labyrinth. Since he can't use skills without talking, he contemplates going back and getting stronger first. But that would be difficult because he already wiped out most of the monsters there. Touka briefly contemplates giving up, but immediately he thinks of the ruthless goddess and he changes his mind. The Soul Eater is releasing something that looks like slime from his mouth. Wait a minute, the slime is taking shape. It transforms into all of the victims of the goddess and the Soul Eater. Now that's just emotionally sick. The Soul Eater seems to be enjoying Touka's look of horror as the man looks beaten already. Touka paralyzes them, but he refuses to do any more than that because they're his fellow victims. The slime humans slowly break out of the paralysis and approach the horrified Touka. Touka calls out for help, and as a means of taunting him, the Soul Eater glides toward him, unguarded. Big mistake. Immediately he sees an opening, and Touka paralyzes the Soul Eater and all the slime humans. All his act was a charade, and the cocky Soul Eater fell for it. Touka is far from being broken, and he proves it by releasing poison to the horror of the Soul Eater. It struggles to set itself free from paralysis, but is only exposing itself to extra damage. Touka stays to see the end of it. Once paralysis is about to end, he uses the sleeping skill, just to make sure the Soul Eater stays put. Finally, the system notifies him that he's leveled up. This must mean the Soul Eater is dead. Touka looks on in pity at the entrapped souls he must have hit. Something amazing then happens. The Soul Eater opens its mouth and releases all the entrapped souls. The souls thank Touka for defeating the Soul Eater and other monsters that killed them. He even sees the soul who owned the coat he's currently wearing. He offers Touka some gems which he hid before his death. Touka looks further and sees a man whom he recognizes as Anglin, the Great Sage. He doesn't hear what Anglin tries to say for some reason. Then the souls come together and fade away. They leave with one plea. Please, defeat the goddess. He's not under obligation to grant that plea, but he was going to try anyway. Finally, Touka steps out of the labyrinth and into the sunlight. It's a nostalgic feeling. On that day, a piece of information was spread throughout the continent. In the far northern reaches, home to countless demons, the great demon emperor's armies had begun their march to the south. The cornerstone of the north, the kingdom of Magnar's pride, the great fortress Nightwall has fallen. Each country was forced to plan their countermeasures, and the kingdom of Alien, headed by the goddess Vices, was no exception. A battle is set to begin, and it's made up of rulers, conquerors, fugitives, avengers, and also pawns, just like the ones gathered by the goddess Vices. In the forest, there's a high-speed foot chase going on. A strange woman runs from a group of men. Even with her fast legs, they manage to catch up with her. No surprise there. They are direct descendants of the heroes of old after all. It's a group of 4 that any mercenary would know, the White Walkers. There's the Lash Finebird, called the Fang, Asura, called the Demonic Heavenly Body, Jiobane Sengai, called the Overwhelming Force, and Magat's Bradinus, called the Sword God. The strange runner knows she can't avoid the group for long, so she decides to face them. She invokes the regalia of the spirits, Sylphixia, Feral Benga, and Willow Zega. Armed with the spirits, she is ready to face them. She deduces that their mission is to bring her in alive, especially since they haven't hit any critical points and are holding back. Her stamina is quickly depleting, so she needs to end the battle as soon as possible. She amplifies her 5 senses but immediately starts to feel a strong sense of death. The pressure is too overwhelming and she can't keep up with it. Is this the end of our strange runner? Meanwhile, Touka is in the forest. He reads the book that Anglin left behind, the Encyclopedia on the Forbidden Arts. He already learned a lot from the book. For example, Goddess Vices has a passive skill, the Goddess Disenchantment, which creates a barrier around her that deflects all status ailments without fail. Unfortunately, this means that revenge would be even more difficult than he originally thought. It doesn't put him off though. Another thing he learned is that the success rate of status ailment skills in this world are extremely low, which is probably why the goddess tried to dispose of him. But then why do his skills work every time? What if rank E stands for extra? Maybe he was given those extra gifts because he was chosen. At this point, it's the only theory that makes sense to him. Lastly, in the encyclopedia, there's a scroll titled Spellbook of Incantation, but he can't understand the language. When his class came in, the goddess said that all characters are automatically transformed into Japanese. This must mean that she can't translate this book either. The special book is in the hands of the extra rank man. No, it could just be a coincidence. He then gets up to leave. He has all the time in the world to solve this after all. He doesn't take too many steps before he hears a noise and looks back. It's a group of 5 slimes gathered against just one. How unfair. He remembers that he's yet to check his new skill since defeating the Soul Eater. He checks and sees that part of it is the non-lethal poison release. There's also a partial paralysis release. This would be beneficial if he's fighting to torture and not kill. To test out his new skill set, he uses the fighting slimes as his guinea pig. He activates the non-lethal poison option and they are in serious pain but don't die. Good. He finally deactivates it and the slimes run off. Well, all but one. The slime he saved pulls his shirt to be seen. Pete, it says. He translated it to mean thank you. He sets back out, but the slime holds on to him. Looks like he's just found a companion. Since the little monster doesn't exhibit bloodlust, he allows it to stay. It smartly wraps itself around him like a belt, since monsters can't be brought to town. Monsters have a detection skill. Maybe this relationship could prove beneficial. He calls it Pigimaru because of the sound it makes. The new companion barely takes a couple of steps together when Piggy pulls him back, and just in time. He barely escapes a dagger thrown at him by a strange man. No, it's a group of people. 4 to be precise. Touka isn't whom the White Walkers seek, but they're ready to kill the strange boy in the woods. After all, he might be an accomplice to their target. They threaten Touka to give them the strange runner's location, but he doesn't know whom they refer to. He doesn't want to fight and pleads with them to spare him, saying he doesn't know the woman. The White Walkers don't care if he's telling the truth or not. They decide to play bully and even test out their new weapons. The Sword God commands his dagger to come back to him. He's ready to finish off the stranger with the dagger. Still seeking to avoid a fight, Touka begs the swordsman to let him go. With a smirk, the swordsman refuses, not knowing he just spelt his inevitable doom. Touka paralyzes the White Walkers, which is more of a trial as he didn't know if the skill worked on humans. The group is shell-shocked. How does one kid paralyze 4 trained men at the same time? Touka has little time for words. Since they were going to kill him, he returns the favor with poison. With all of them lying dead, Touka realizes that he just killed humans for the first time. Yet he doesn't feel anything. Is it because they were scum or were trying to kill him? Whatever it is, he has no reservations about taking human life now. He picks up their coins. After all, money is needed by the living and not the dead. Then he feels something. It's a huge pressure coming from the direction of the bushes and Pigimaru feels it too. The White Walkers mention something about a woman. Well, you can't be too careful. He sends Pigimaru to bait her from the other side. With Pigimaru there, the killing intent vanishes and the strange runner cannot detect anyone else there. That's when Touka immediately paralyzes her. He senses that she doesn't have killing intent and asks her if, unlike those guys, she's capable of civilized talk. The strange runner is surprised and relieved. She must have thought she was captured by a White Walker. Touka discloses that he's not from the area. He asks for information about the area and the closest village to it. With the help of the spirits, she can tell that he's not lying. He notices that she can't talk under paralysis, so he frees her mouth. During the conversation, he confirms that she's the one the White Walkers were after. On the other hand, she's shocked to learn that he encountered and killed the White Walkers. Who is this guy exactly? She insists that they're not enemies, and to prove it, she lets him unmask her. In return, he drops his guard and releases her from paralysis. From his dressing, she guesses he knows a thing or two about magic. She says he can ask anything. and the first thing he does is show her the spellbook. He asks if she can read the language there. She has a horrified look on her face that gives away the answer. She surely knows something about the language and its meaning. Who exactly is this strange woman, and what does she know? He shows her the scroll that the great mage had written himself, containing information unknown and out of the reach of the goddess Isis. He wants to know what this writing says, especially if it's something able to rub the goddess's face in the mud, given that the great mage wasn't really on good terms with her all his life. I mean, she did throw him into the ancient ruins area where Touka was disposed of. Unfortunately, after giving a glint of hope as she wore a face that implied she was familiar with the characters, she didn't have a clue how to read, decipher, or explain the scroll. There was something she did know, someone who could read the scroll. There's a woman banished from most of the land for her unknown and otherworldly magic, popularly known as the Forbidden Witch. She should be able to understand the characters in the scroll as she may practice or have dabbled into the same queer magic the great mage was disposed of for. The Forbidden Witch lives in the great historic ruins, but getting there will prove quite arduous. Touka's true problem is the fact that he is just a disposed of hero who knows little to nothing about the mappings and terrains of the world he's in. He asks his hostage, well, not for long, to enlighten him on the environment, its pricing system, and how to get to the great historic ruins, unfazed by whatever he would probably face. She briefs him on the maps, currency, and their corresponding worth. She can say all this due to Touka's newly developed skill, partial paralysis, which enables him to free parts of her body. After an informative conversation, he frees her from paralysis and soon heads off to the nearest town called Mirizu with Pigimaru. In Mirizu, a bustling town by the way, he gets the true needs first, food, then shelter, and some new clothes. Yeah, the clothes he had on were roughed up a bit by the White Walkers, those 4 guys he regarded as scum that he took out for wanting to kill him. The food in this world is exceptional, and Touka blesses his taste buds with this new feel until he is satisfied. Before getting to where he's going to lay his head at night, he looks out for information, and there's no better place for gathering information than a bar. At the bar, he gets to know about the heroes and organization of the country's leadership, the different nations, and the alliance against the Demon King. A gist that piqued his interest was one where goddess Isis is mentioned, and due to his undying zeal and desire for revenge, wiping the smirk off the goddess's face, he listened carefully as they mentioned the resistance to the Demon King, the undefeated Beauty King's shining army, Magaruno White Wolf Knights, Yodona's nation's holy extermination force, and this country, Uruza's Magic Knights. Naturally, if there's a talk in such a place, the strongest person around is usually mentioned, and it doesn't change here as the people brag about the strongest human around, a Dragon Knight who could hold his own against the Demon King himself in a duel. Dragon Knights are strong to the point that just 5 could take on an entire nation, and this man is one, Sibid Gathard. Since he's gotten the information he needed, the next on the to-do list is getting shelter, and so he heads towards an inn. At first, seeing the ragged up clothes that Touka had on, the innkeeper informs him that all the large and single rooms are booked due to the heavy inflow of heroes and adventurers for recruitment. When Touka drops the money he took from the dead on the counter, the innkeeper, seeing the amount of money, had an instant change of heart, pleading with Touka to lodge with them as long as he pleases. When asked what his name is, Touka answers with an alias, Hattie Shoal. Meanwhile, the ruins investigation unit with its new member head out to survey the ruins like they always do, while simultaneously briefing the new guy on how things work there, and how he shouldn't be extra in whatever he does. Truthfully, it had good pay for a lazy and easy job, and they want to keep it that way. Suddenly, the chief of the unit notices something odd. The crystal they used to detect the presence that makes it out of the ruins didn't change color, which meant something had likely left the ruins. The new guy was excited to check it out and investigate till the last detail, but the chief waved it off like nothing happened, saying the crystal is defective. The new guy then brings up the suggestion of reporting to the higher-ups, but the chief, who wants no extra stress and I'd say is comfortable with his pay, warns and threatens Jim sternly, so he keeps quiet and goes with the flow. In the inn, Touka, or Hattie as we'll refer to him, reads a newspaper of some sort and gets information about the recruitment of people into the investigation unit, and for the exploring of the ruins from the innkeeper. This interests Hattie as he believes the ruins hold magical items and skills that would aid Pigimaru, his improvement, and overall strength, which would be handy in the future. Given how much Pigimaru has saved him and had his back, an upgrade in the slime strength would be a good addition. Pigimaru is the only and best company he has, and at the same time the best defense regardless. Even though Hattie was able to clear the other ruin and sense kill intent from the other bosses, Pigimaru has been a big help in defense. Defense isn't a conjurer's or mage's strong suit after all, and Hattie is no exception. He had problems with an overwhelming horde of monsters. With all this, he realizes he still needs a partner. To be specific, an attacker to balance the equation, or better put, adaptive formation for fighting. Someone who can buy him enough time when facing very strong opponents. At the town square, a rowdy bunch is waiting for a briefing from the marquis. Just as fusses are bound to be made in large crowds, someone was ready to play this role. Monk Drogody, a self-proclaimed Flash, spots a woman he knows so well. Asarasu Ashrin, a Valkyrie, a warrior elf, who is general of a fallen nation and is now in hiding. It was the woman Hattie, or Touka, saw in the forest that was pursued by the White Walkers. Monk Drogody had asked her out to dinner once, and she refused him, so today he intends to force and most likely bully to accept by threatening to reveal her ears. This woman puts on an interesting act, saying he was probably mistaking her for someone else. Touka, or Hattie, on the other hand knew it was the elf he saw that day. Monk reached out to her and took off the hood, but to his shock saw normal ears. This made him look stupid and perverted in the eye of the public as they pull him away from her. She then walked over to Hadi, who had sensed her magic nearby. They both acknowledge they notice each other and introductions are made, but with aliases, Mist and Hadi. Hadi tells her it's a fake name, but real names don't matter, which she agrees, glad that he's well-mannered. The Marquis, Great Harkley, finally announces the recruitment, its objectives, and rewards. He's willing to buy any treasure brought from the ruins at a seller's bargain price and at the value the adventurer is comfortable with. The main objective for this exploration is the retrieval of the Dragon Eye Sake Cup, and Great Harkley is ready to give 300 gold coins to whoever gets it. Mist explains that there are a lot of ways to make money from this exploration, aside from killing monsters and getting the Dragon Eye Sake Cup. Rewards could be earned from maps, outlines of the areas, and information about monsters in the ruins. Most important of all, the Marquis has a hidden goal, one he wants to use effectively. By recruiting random members of the public and adventurers, they sacrifice their lives to get information, valuable information, and the map of the whole area. With this information at their disposal, it will be safer for the Marquis' men to go in and explore without any death. After all this explanation, as they were about to get moving, Mist got weak and almost fell on Hadi. This is due to a lack of sleep as she hasn't slept in a while and her fatigue is ever rising by the second. Hadi urges her to rest before they embark on their journey, but affirms she's good and will catch up soon. In the ruins, Hadi faces off against some monsters some others are finding it difficult to kill. Using the combo paralysis and poison, he clears his way through the levels very easily with Pigamaru on his shoulders. The first monster, a minotaur but quite different from the one he killed back at his disposal area. This one has way less kill intent and danger as it wasn't very intimidating. He tries using his knife to cut open monsters for materials he would need to strengthen Pigamaru, and turns out that unlike before, he very much can. The effortless killing continues and he gets to the 6th floor where a horde of monsters rush at him, but using the same combo, he effortlessly wipes them out. What he finds weird is that these monsters did not exude killing intent or bloodlust as he wasn't able to sense them and needed Pigamaru to detect them. Good thing Pigamaru has an amazing detection skill. Soon enough, Hadi runs into Monk Drogody and a few adventurers plotting against Mist. Fueled by his embarrassment and thirst for revenge, Monk pays the adventurers to capture her and bring her to him. So he makes her wish she never denied him his date or embarrassed him in public. Monk planned to kill her but changed his mind. He ordered they her, and then when he is satisfied with the look of despair in her eyes, they kill her by cutting bits of flesh and feeding the monsters. Hadi is disgusted by this plan and plot of wickedness and decides to treat them like the bad people they are. When his presence is known, Monk threatens to kill him alongside Mist and in a feat of rage and pride decides to attack Hadi. Before they can move an inch, he paralyzes them and leaves them there for the next wave of monsters. A grand scale of the death they designed, destroying them properly. On level 14, he encounters a group of adventurers who beckon him to advise him. They are the Saber Tiger group, and they notice that the monsters on the levels and floors of the area were not dying normal or natural deaths, but were dying in an absurd amount in way. When they appraise the cause of death, they find poison in the monsters, which wasn't a safe or normal sign. They advise him to tell other adventurers to leave before it's too late and ask if he wants to join them while leaving. He turns the offer down politely, saying he can't leave friends behind. In actual truth, this weird happening would be Hadi killing the monsters, and he didn't have time to cover up the cause of death or hide the bodies. He also didn't like the attention this might get him, but in this particular case, it's favorable for him as there's no struggle for the Dragon Eye Sake Cup. He keeps exploring till he gets to the level /floor 17, where he sees a dragon statue. Just like the Soul Eater, Pigamaru could sense its kill intent, and before it could attack, Hadi paralyzed and poisoned it, killing it in one attack. The cup is revealed, and as he is about to carry it, he is stopped and ambushed by Mist unintentionally. They both withdrew their weapons when they saw each other. He hands her the cup for his good reason of not standing out, and because that wasn't his main goal, it was a secret passage which he searched for and opened up. Mist feels indebted to him as it was not an item you just get for free. She offers her body and soul to him, but Hadi refuses, as he never wanted a master-slave relationship. She suggests that she follows him through the passage and protects him, and Hadi agrees under some conditions. The first, she would brief him on the conditions of nearby countries. The next is that she doesn't tell the Marquis, keeping this a secret, and the last is she asks no questions about his personal life. They head in together to the unknown, and Mist is curious how he spots her detect's presence. Since they'll be working together, he decides to introduce Pigamaru to her. When she sees the slime, she's surprised and gleefully plays with Pigamaru. Pigamaru is also friendly to her, making her the first human, aside from Hadi, it doesn't attack. I guess ladies always love pets, even pet slime. Soon enough, they find a golden eye monster. This is a sign that the habitat is close by. Mist takes it out in one strike with ease, and Hadi gets to experience what it feels like to have a partner, his dream formation coming true. They continue exploring the underground levels for the unknown treasures that lay hidden. They get to a shut door with a magic orb right in front of it. Luckily, while exploring the ruins he was disposed in, he came across the orb and is familiar with how it works. You pour in magic and a quantity enough to open the door. While he does that, he asks Mist to explain the difference between golden eye monsters and non-golden eye ones. She informs him of a theory made by the great mage, Anglin himself. This supposedly is the reason for his disposal by the goddess. Anglin believes that the monsters who were closer to the source of evil and its power were monsters that had golden eyes. Due to this evil source, their abilities are heightened and their animal instincts turn normal monsters into ferocious beasts. The monsters without golden eyes are the kind that is friendly to humans and are safe to be around. The goddess Vices is also suspected of using GoldenEye monsters, and all this resonated as Touka remembers seeing golden light emanate from the heroes who were S-class, especially Kirihara Takuto, before his disposal. Something is unsettling that might be going on here. He wonders where his classmates are now and how they are surviving and doing. Meanwhile, some heroes from his class were engaged in battle against the skeleton boss and its minions in the Alien Kingdom. They faced the skeletons ferociously while singing self-praises of how strong they are and gaining experience points. Kirihara took on the skeletons and did most of the fighting for his team, while Oyamada Shoga, an A-class hero, backed him up, killing skeletons and racking up points as well. Another key hero is Takao Usuki, blessed with the skill of lightning. She takes on a couple of skeletons at long range with lightning shots. Her elder sister, Takao Hijiri, an S-class hero who is smarter and a freethinker, cautions her, saying it's not only about getting strong or earning points, it's about understanding the system and beating it eventually. She said this because she doubts the goddess will send them back to the normal world, if this all ends, with emphasis on if. They analyze the 4 groups that heroes from their class have fallen into. Kirihara's group, which comprises Kirihara as the leader, Oyadama as a support, and a bunch of other B-class or above heroes who sing praises for both of them. The Ikusaba group, comprising of Ikusaba, a B-class hero as the leader, and a bunch of girls who work well under her. The Yasu group, containing Yasu and heroes rejected by the Kirihara and Ikusaba groups. Then there's the Sogo group, led by Sogo Ayaka, an S-class hero, the girl who stood up to the goddess for Touka's sake. Meanwhile, Sogo is trying desperately to level up as she has the dying urge to get stronger and protect the weak as she had promised the goddess. Earlier, she had a conversation with the goddess who was eager to dispose of heroes below the S-class, and anyone weak or unable to fight in the coming war with the Demon Lord. Sogo promises to fight in their stead and protect them so far as the goddess doesn't harm them. In the bid to save the disposable heroes, she steals her zeal to get stronger and prevent another Touka from being disposed of, as she was not strong enough to save him then. Sogo manages to level up a couple of times, but still doesn't gain a unique skill even though she's killing as many monsters as the others were. She manages to kill skeleton monsters around her, but doesn't expect the turn of events that comes next. In an instant, Sakura, a member of her team, had her hand cut off by the skeleton boss. Kashima, another member, thought quickly and rushed over to stop the bleeding, while Sogo contemplates her strength and if she could indeed defeat the skeleton boss in front of her. She asks the two to move to somewhere safe so that she take care of the monster in front of them, sending shivers down their spine. Turning to face her grand opponent, she steals her resolve to save others and decides to face it. Sogo recalls her grandmother's teaching, saying she wasn't lucky for being born into this generation, or at this time, but is lucky because she was born with talent. A bit ironic for someone without a unique skill in the other world. Anyway, back to the fight. They remember a technique that is sure to bring down this giant monster, Hisoryu. This technique involves passing energy through your body and the weapon the user is wielding. This way, it magnifies the impact of any strike landed or parried. Using this technique, she summons Helix Spear Collapsing Star. Instead of blocking the attack, she parried it, weakening the skeleton in one strike. Sakura drags her out of the way, saving her from a draconic blast that Kirihara had sent without warning, which finishes off the monster, but would have done a lot of damage to Sogo if she wasn't saved. At the goddess's office in the Alien Kingdom, a meeting is arranged between her and the goddess. Vices informs her that she has restored Sakura's hand with the skill Heal. The goddess also commends her for her active participation and role in the fight, though she asks Sogo why she didn't or doesn't work with Kirihara as she expected S-class heroes to stick together. Sogo explains that she wouldn't work well with Kirihara. Vices informs her of the representative meeting and her responsibility, which Sogo agrees and assures she'll do. The goddess gives a fake smile and approval as Sogo leaves, but it turns sour a second after, showing true intentions. Meanwhile, back at the Great Historic Ruins, Hattie tries to talk Mist into sleeping as her fatigue levels have risen so high. After much admonishing, she finally decides to lie down but doesn't sleep, forcing Hattie to use the skill, Sleep. As she sleeps off, the transformation magic she used to hide her true appearance starts to fade away, showing off her true form, as the Valkyrie elf Asurasu Ashrin. Siras wakes up and is shocked by the form she sees. She's now exposed and has some explaining to do. Luckily for her, he has no intention of exposing her secret. Touka explains his side of the story, how he felt concerned for her and had to make her fall asleep. Falling asleep made her genjutsu fade, as it needs to be consciously controlled. She tells Touka how she borrows the power of the spirits by offering them her desire to sleep. She can change her appearance with the help of the light spirit, tell if someone is lying with the help of the wind spirits, strengthen her weapons with the help of the ice spirits, and can generate armor and equipment by combining all of them. She had to change her appearance because the White Walkers were after her. Touka notices that she doesn't bother to revert to her previous form. This must mean she trusts him now, and so he lets out a secret of his own. My real name is Touka Mimori. He says he wouldn't tell if she doesn't. He also assures her that they are equal. She isn't his servant and shouldn't be so humble around him. Now that she's well rested, they hope she can fight at full strength. Touka and Saras didn't need to wait so long for a test. They soon encountered the Skeleton King, the boss of the ruins. Saras uses the spirit's power to increase her danger detection, and then she bravely goes in to face the monster. With the Skeleton King occupied with Serasu, Touka can get close to it and utilizes paralysis and poison skills. Once that happens, the monster is no match for them. Oh, that's another thing Serasu didn't know about him. He asks her not to tell anyone about his unique skills. With the Skeleton King dealt with, Touka can get what he came for. a powder of silver bones to help Piggymaru level up. Piggy also draws his attention to a strange egg which Touka takes with him. With that, the dungeon is conquered. A little while later, Touka is at his lodge when Sarasu comes to meet him. She has successfully submitted the Dragon's Eye sake cup since Touka insisted that he didn't want it. She was asked to come for the reward the next day. She was also offered accommodation at the mansion but declined for obvious reasons. Speaking of accommodation, Touka has a surprise for her. He got an extra room for Sarasu so she can sleep well. She wants to reject it but is tempted by the idea of a good shower after a long day. Sometime later, Sarasu is taking advantage of the accommodation by using the showers. Elves don't have strong body odor, but this is still helpful. She thinks back to her time in the Nea Holy Kingdom. She was so beautiful and every man desired her. That's not something she liked, so she never truly interacted with men. She thinks back to what prompted her to leave the kingdom. The princess, Cattleya, asked her to leave the kingdom because she cannot protect her any longer. For someone that is the captain of the Holy Knights, she should be the one giving protection. But the princess tells her that the Bakosu kingdom will conquer the country soon. Then she wouldn't be able to protect Sarasu from the men desiring her beauty. Now under her bed covers, Sarasu can't help but think about the similarities between Cattleya and Touka. They're completely different people, but something about them feels so similar. Since she escorted him to the dungeon, Touka offers to reward Sarasu. It's a stone of high value, or at least he thinks so. Sarasu recognizes it to be an Azure Dragon stone, with an even higher value than the Dragon's Eye sake cup. She refuses to accept the reward because of its high value. In reality, Touka got the stone from the victims in the abandoned historic ruins. An Azure Dragon stone is produced by an Azure Dragon, which is the legendary creature of frightening strength level. A little while later, Sarasu leaves to collect her reward for the cup. The companions agree to meet up by 1 o'clock, as she should be done collecting the reward by then. She leaves for Marquis' mansion while he sets out to do his task. Using the materials gotten from the Skeleton King, he seeks to formulate an enhancement drug for Piggymaru. After a little while of mixing and preparing, the drug is ready for testing. Piggy reacts so violently to the drug being given that it damages most of the room they stay in. Touka can only get off the house owner's back when he promises to pay for damages. On the bright side, the experiment is a success according to the book. All that remains is a battlefield test. It's well past the agreed time for Sarasu's return, and Touka starts to get worried. Did something happen to her? Has she taken advantage of his kindness and now left him? Both he and Piggy cast that thought aside almost immediately. Then again, he gave her the Azure Dragon stone in the morning. She claimed to know how to convert the stone to money. Maybe she selfishly wants it all to herself. He sets out to begin his investigation. Before he leaves, he overhears people discussing the woman who found the Dragon's Eye sake cup. That's Sarasu. He eavesdrops on the conversation and finds out that her identity was truly exposed. According to them, a magician famous for breaking genjutsu happened to be in the mansion. He broke Sarasu's genjutsu and everyone noticed that she had the exact face of the previous head of the Holy Knights. The men say that Sarasu managed to escape to the Dark Forest, but a huge bounty is placed on her head. Before he leaves for the Dark Forest, Touka hears something that would send shivers down the spine of the ordinary man. The Marquis sent his mercenaries to capture Sarasu. This group is not made up of ordinary knights though. They're rumored to be the strongest knights in the world, the Black Dragon Knights. The Black Dragon Knights are said to be strong because of their abilities, but even more so because they are led by the man in the white armor, Civet Gatland, the strongest human. As Sarasu Ashrin runs for her life in the Dark Forest, she can't believe her misfortune. A magician famous for breaking genjutsu just had to be at the mansion. She also thinks about Touka and Piggy and how they must think she betrayed their trust. But even more importantly, she has the Black Dragon Knights in hot pursuit. As expected from such a famous group, she can't shake them off. She has no choice but to face them. The Black Dragon Knights are the world's strongest knights. The ones who command the knights are the mighty 5 Dragon Warriors. Together with the 5 Dragon Warriors, the Hero Slayers are very popular throughout the mainland, but there's one who stands above them all. He makes the Black Dragon Knights the strongest in the world. He isn't an illegitimate child of the gods. He isn't one of the heroic blood's lineage, nor is he a hero from another world. He is simply a human being who has reached the top and become the strongest. He's rumored to be as strong as an entire country's military force. He is humanity's strongest, Civet Gatland. The Black Dragon Knights are split into different teams while searching for Sarasu. Team Oben spots their target in the forest. They have orders to kill her, but Civet is intrigued by how strong she could be. Meanwhile, Sarasu can sense that she's being watched. Even if she manages to defeat the rest, she knows that she is no match for Civet and that makes her tremble. But she doesn't give up. With her sword, she brings down 1 knight and then 2. She is a little worn out, so she doesn't sense an incoming knight in time. She can't dodge the attack, but manages to block it and prevent a critical hit. This knight is Kizun, one of the 5 Dragon Warriors and the vice captain of Team Oben. Kizun would be beatable on a normal day, but Sarasu is unable to use the light spirit power for now, due to the genjutsu being forcefully broken. This means that her weapon and energy level are much lower than normal. As a result, Kizun toys with her in the fight and is finished in no time. With the beautiful warrior helplessly tied to the ground, Kizun cannot control his lustful desires and attempts to forcefully lay with her. Already weakened to her bones, Sarasu battles in vain to save her dignity, but Kizun overpowers her. All hope is nearly lost, but someone from the bushes suddenly paralyzes Kizun. It's way past the time we promised to meet, he says. Thankfully, he made it just in time. Touka frees Saras, who is thankful but even more worried. He knows that these are the Dragon Knights of the Bakuosu Kingdom, and he knows just how dangerous they are. Why did he come here? Touka combines Kizun's paralysis with non-lethal poisoning and then responds to Saras. He tells her about how the news of her near capture and escape spread all over town, and how he had to rescue her since she didn't betray him. But rescuing her means that he'd also be chased by the Dragon Knights, so she insists that he saves himself and leaves. Touka has an idea. Saras could change to a completely different face with her genjutsu. Nice idea, Smarty, if only she didn't think of it herself. Oh wait, she did. She tells him about not being able to use the genjutsu for now, since it was thrown into confusion by the genjutsu breaking magician. Saras returns the Azure Dragon Stone to Touka, as she can't be his bodyguard anymore. Touka confesses that it's a lot of trouble. The warrior elf directs him to places where he could hire mercenaries as guards. She even offers to teach him how to convert the Dragon Stone to money. With a smirk on his face, Touka refuses the offer. By a whole lot of trouble, he meant that getting a better bodyguard is a whole lot of trouble. He insists to stay with her. Touka suggests that she negotiates and hides with the Witch of Taboos. It makes perfect sense since the witch's location is not even on the map. It also makes a lot of sense from Touka's perspective. If he needs to negotiate with the witch, Saras's wind spirit could discern if he's being lied to. He also brings up the monster area as a possible hiding place. Since all these places are more convenient than facing the Black Dragon Knights, they decide to continue their companionship. Saras is blown away by how kind and selfless Touka is to her. He says she reminds him of his aunt, who together with his uncle took care of him after his parents abandoned him. Abandoning her right now would feel very much like abandoning his aunt when she needs him. There's no way he could do that. They remember that Kizun and his Black Dragon are still under attack from Touka's poison. The Black Dragon is dead, but thanks to the non-lethal option, Kizun is only in severe pain. Touka uses the opportunity to get more information from him. The search for information goes both ways. During the conversation, Touka reveals that he killed Kizun's Oben teammates while coming. Kizun refuses to believe, but the evidence is right there in its full misery. Even with this knowledge, the knight remains cocky. He riles Saras up by telling her about the women of the country and what he did with them. Kizun tries his best to pass the endurance test, but it's a lasting one. Finally, he gives up and is ready to talk. He barely says anything when a spear divides him into two from the waist below. Touka realizes that the attack came from a long distance, even farther than his skill range. That's the reason he didn't sense the attack. Crap, it's him, Civic Gatland. King Ortora Stramius is the Holy King of the Holy Nea Kingdom. As has been the pattern in recent times, the king wakes up from a nightmare, and it's about the same person, Saras Ashran. The king recalls how she left the capital as instructed by his daughter. It proved to be the correct decision, as the Nea eventually fell to Bakuo's kingdom. Saras is safe from the goddess and knights, so why does this feel like the wrong decision? He remembers Saras and her desirable physical characteristics. He wanted to have her. He wants to have her. He regrets not having had carnal knowledge of her, even if it had to be by force. There's no way he would let another man defile her when he couldn't. He concludes that if he can't have her, nobody should, and so she has to die. Saras Ashran refuses to believe it when Civic Gatland informs her that her death was ordered by King Ortora. He was such a nice man, how is this even possible? The Dragon Knight insists that the king offered them fortunes and jewelry just to kill her. The Dragon Knights discuss amongst themselves how to kill her. Some of them insist that the beautiful elf should be passed around the subordinates before killing her. How cruel. But the king specifically requested for her corpse with her purity intact. He even claimed that he would know if there were another man sent on her. Now that's creepy. If Saras can't tell when people are lying, why is she getting worked up by these guys? Could it mean that they're telling the truth? Touka's thoughts are interrupted by an offer from the Dragon Knights. The Knights propose a battle between Civet and Saras to decide her fate. Civet is just intrigued by how strong she could be, especially after learning about her spiritual powers. He looks forward to the fight, or at least he did before he sighted Touka. The Knights assume that Touka is no more than a porter hired by the elf, but Civet Garland knows better. The pair haven't exchanged blows yet, but Touka already has a strong feeling that this man is much more dangerous than the Soul Eater. He needs to handle this carefully, otherwise he might lose his life. He throws Civet off with a smirk on his face and then asks for a conversation with them. The warriors are locked in dialogue. Touka reveals that his name is Hadi Skull, but Civet can tell that he's lying. The Dragon Knight senses that Touka has something up his sleeves, so Touka just goes straight to the point. All Civet wants is an opponent that can satisfy him in battle. Touka shrewdly tries to measure his strength by asking about battles with the Great Demon Emperor and Alion's goddess. Civet reveals that he can't battle with the goddess because it could risk the diplomacy between both countries. Then again, the heroes summoned by the goddess from the other world intrigue him. Because of their divine blessings, one of them might be able to get to his level and become his arch-rival. There it is, the opening Touka is looking for. He steps up and proposes that he'd be Civet's ultimate opponent. Wait, what? He baits Civet by revealing his true name, and that he's one of the heroes from the other world. About 10 odd years between the Holy Nea Kingdom and Bakuo's kingdom, there was a problem in which golden-eyed monsters were pouring out from the historic ruins of the two kingdoms' borders. The kingdoms decided to deal with this problem together and sent their armies. Human-faced monsters were also identified, and the battle was expected to cause huge casualties. When the armies got to the ruins, they saw a boy battling in the middle of a mountain made of monsters' corpses.
This boy looked more entertained than stressed. With every move, he sent heads of monsters flying. The armies almost mistook him for a demon that was told of in folklore. The monsters started to stay away from the boy, and the armies took advantage of the monster's confusion and wiped out the rest of the army. The boy looked around and screamed angrily. He complained that the monsters didn't confront him as they should have. The boy wanted an enemy. Eventually, he became the leader of the Black Dragon Knights, as he believed he would meet someone powerful there. He is the strongest abnormality of the human race. He is Civet Gartland. Civet is surprised that Touka is a hero from another world, as is Saros. Civet cannot help but smile. After all, he might have finally found his match. Then again, what is a hero doing in this location? Touka recalls that Civet can see through his lies, so he must be really smart about his response. Touka responds that he has a special situation and acts differently because of the goddess. He's not lying, Civet can tell. Civet questions him further, asking whether he received special orders from the goddess to act separately from other heroes. He replies that he's of a special rank, which is why he's allowed to act separately. Again, he's not lying. The Black Dragon Knight can barely hide his excitement about possibly finding a hero specially recognized by the goddess. That's when Touka shows his cards. He asks for some time to get stronger before facing Civet. At the moment, he's no match for Civet, but if he's given some time, he promises to get stronger and kill Civet. This man is really interesting. Civet asks how he plans to get stronger, and he says that he's heading to the Golden Ice monster area to level up. Civet asks a few more questions, to which Touka smartly responds. Civet is intrigued by the possibility. But what if Touka intends to run away? How would he find this interesting warrior? Well, he concludes that the goddess wouldn't let Touka go missing, especially as she recognized him as a special warrior. No need to fret. As for Touka, he has scores to settle with the goddess, so he'll surely be there. Civet agrees to free the companions on these terms. His fellow knights are not happy with the decision, but can't do anything about it. He calls out to Saros and instructs her to protect Touka with her life until he's battle ready. He doesn't miss the opportunity to rile her up, as he threatens her with Princess Cattleya, her former master. He even informs her that the princess has a wedding coming up with the Black Dragon Knight's captain. Enough has been said already, and the Dragon Knights turn to take their leave. Touka breathes a heavy sigh of relief. He just survived humanity's strongest, and Saros didn't die too. And even more, he was able to get close enough to put Civet in his skill range. With his guard down and back turned, it's now or never. Touka almost successfully casts his skill when Civet notices that something is wrong. He sees Touka doing something and draws his sword to stop him. Did Touka's plan just fail by a few seconds? He put all of Civet's subordinates under the skill, stopping their movement and harming them if they tried to force it. All the others find it hard to move, but not Civet Garland, as he struggles to take a step while bearing the multiplying pain being inflicted by the skill. He moved quite the distance to surprise Touka, as even the soul leader he fought and defeated at the abandoned ruins couldn't move, and quite frankly, that was his strongest and toughest opponent yet. The soul leader and Civet did share similarities, as Touka used fear to deceive the soul leader, and also deceived Civet with something similar: weakness. The strength didn't last long, as soon enough, Civet dropped to his knees, weakened from the compiled pain from paralysis, and the second skill Touka used: poison. The others were groaning in pain, soon to lose consciousness and meet death and defeat. Immediately, Civet hit the ground and something unusual happened. A flare went up to indicate that there were problems at this encounter. Originally, the flares were meant for members of the Kingdom's Knighthood or the other Black Dragon Knights to use as a signal to Civet that someone strong enough to defeat a Black Dragon Knight had been encountered. Given that such a person is considered a threat, they wouldn't be allowed to escape by killing one knight. Hence, Civet appears at the point of battle to destroy any such opponent. Since Civet is the one down and gradually dying, the Black Dragon Knights show up almost immediately, as Civet had probably asked them to chill somewhere while he handles the situation. Talk about a considerate and charismatic leader. Back to the story, the Black Dragon Knights show up, and Civet, who surprisingly has enough energy to shout out orders them to kill Touka and Saros, but from a distance, as he had experienced firsthand what Touka can do at close range. The fact Civet could even shout at this point was very impressive, just to be expected from the man nicknamed Humanity's Strongest. Touka has solutions to the range problem for paralysis and poison skills, which is he combines with Piggymaru. The enhancement effect from borrowing power from monsters enhances his skills. On connecting with Piggymaru, wearing the slime-like outer coating, his skills increase as gel sprouts from Piggymaru containing the skill itself. Upon contact with the target, it initiates Touka's attack with an amplified effect. Though this form uses a lot of MP and mental strength, it is an effective means he will use to attack the knights and the dragons they flew on. Next, he faces the knights with Piggymaru on his shoulders, sending attacks at the knights. They try to cut off the slime, but even though they did, the point or surface of the slime is where his skill activates. Hence, there's no way out for the knights, and with this, Touka plans to destroy them all. Civet realizes the Black Dragons have come to an end. A painful story. Let's delve into Civet's background and life for a bit here. After the subjugation of a golden-eyed monster by Civet at a very young age, he amazed the onlookers who took the opportunity he gave them to wipe out the remainder of the monsters. Civet was invited by the king himself to the nation, and on accepting that invitation, he was soon adopted by a noble family. This family was the Gartland, headed by Earl Gartland. This head loved war and the idea of strength and victory, so hearing about Civet made him excited enough to ask the king that Civet becomes his foster son. Things turned out great as Civet became a member of the noble society, and it wasn't all about strength for this young boy. Another quality that made him stand out was how quickly he adapted and learned the mannerisms and customs of the nobles. He loved and valued his foster family and continued being a recognized member of the Bakuo's kingdom. This wasn't enough as Civet stood out yet again in the eye of the public. Being the strongest around and recommended by the king, he joined the Black Dragons, and none of the members, the leader, and his son could hold their own against Civet. With this, he was made the leader of the Black Dragon Knights. Another occasion occurred when Civet made a name for himself in his country and beyond. The Bakuo's kingdom had a revolt led by the king's younger brother, a duke with better popularity and a majority of the support from the people. With 8 generals backing him, the revolt began and people took sides. Even members of the Black Dragon Knights sided with the duke, as it's only logical to side with the winning side, so it seemed. Civet, alongside the Gartland family and former leader of the Black Dragon Knights, sided with the king. During this war, Civet single-handedly killed all the generals and ended the whole war all by himself by killing the king's younger brother. Yet again, in search of something or someone that could match his strength or likely overpower him, he journeyed into the ruins and the kingdom in search of a monstrosity that could prove a hard time. 2 months passed and no sign of Civet. The masses had given up their celebrated hero, and the king regretted allowing him to go into the ruins. 2 weeks later, Civet, humanity's strongest, resurfaced with treasures as souvenirs to the king, but with a gloomy face. He had realized he was too strong and life and battle had gotten boring. As fate would have it, to aid his nefarious plans for the Black Dragon Knights, he unlocks a couple of new abnormal status skills that enable him to handle the knights in the cruelest way. The sleep skill increases to level 3 and new ones like Berserk, Dark, and Freeze. All skills that he would test out, excluding the last so it doesn't affect the combo skill of Paralysis and Poison. He was running low on MP pretty fast thanks to the connection with Pigemaru, and it would prove difficult if Civet were to break out of the skill. Touka couldn't deny the fact that he wouldn't be able to face Civet one-on-one if that were the case. He instructs Ceres to watch over Civet and the other paralyzed underlings, so he could focus on the battle with the Black Dragon Knights. Well, right now, I wouldn't call it a battle, because he blocks their eyesight for a short time frame with the skill Dark. Next, he uses the Paralysis and Poison combo as usual, then the Berserk skill. The skill makes the affected struggle to move against their own will, enhancing the pain inflicted and the effect of paralysis, thereby killing the affected faster. When all the knights and the dragons were down, he killed the dragon Gartland rode on, gaining points in the process. For heroes in this world, level up points didn't come from killing humans, but dragons did drag a lot of experience points. Ceres, who had a front row seat to all the action with little to zero participation, was in awe of how enhanced the skill was when he connected to Pigemaru. She was also surprised that he was a hero, and a special one at that, given his case. They both get to find out in this discussion how similar they were as Touka affirms that he wouldn't return her to the goddess Visis, who, by the way, was hunting her and thinks Touka is dead. Borderline, they both hate the goddess with their guts. He also compliments her for staying alert and helping him concentrate, even though she feels deep down she didn't do much. I kinda feel so too. They talk about a reward and Ceres feels unworthy of it, till she does something deserving. All this talk was happening simultaneously with the knights and Civet waiting for Death's final call. Most have consciousness, but the truly strong of the strong, Civet held on to his for a little longer. I guess it's one of the downsides of murder by poisoning. Minds can be changed during the wait. Some might chicken out, but not Touka. Soon enough, Civet's life nears its end and he asks what Touka is as he never expected such a sudden death. Touka bids him farewell as he loses consciousness little by little till he embraces the afterlife. He reminisces about a young Civet who trained to be stronger beyond limits. After watching Civet die, they journey most likely to the Golden Eye area to find more monsters to level up with. They then talk about the princess Ceres had left behind as well as the plans that the goddess had for the princess. Turns out Ceres loved the princess so much and Touka could tell. She asked Touka who he planned on carrying his revenge on, and he said with bloodlust and rage in his eyes, the goddess Visis. Meanwhile, in Albion at the ancient dragon ruins of the nation, the heroes have to face golden-eyed monsters to get more points and level up. As she promised the goddess, she protected and watched over the low class B and below, encouraging them to focus on defending and protecting themselves, leaving all killing monsters to her. If they had strength left to spare, they could join in buying her time and aiding her killings. She vowed to get strong enough to face the Demon King as soon as possible so all her classmates would go home, because she doesn't want anyone dying. But for now, she'll protect as much as she can, leaving no room for another death like Touka that she couldn't save. Borderline, these group members were weak and to be disposed of by the princess, so they are relieved and love the fact that they are part of Sugo's team and can easily protect themselves, especially for one girl, Suo. Sugo asked her if she could help protect the others as she is the only brave one in the bunch, even though her rank and class don't correlate. While Sugo tries to liven the spirits of her team members, the Yasu group walks in, and Yasu, its leader, went on to say derogatory things about the weak members of Sugo's team. He asks Sugo why she would want to team up with such weak classmates, as heroes below rank A are called white heroes, which are best put as mob characters or mob heroes. He then proposes they join forces together, which Sugo strongly refuses as she feels they would not work well together. After a short while, a wave of monsters shows up and this gives Yasu a great opportunity to show off his skills. He didn't waste any time demonstrating what an A-class hero could do. Using his special ability, Sword Eye of Black Flames, he obliterates the monsters and does this quite easily. It wasn't just Yasu that came with the big guns as Sugo observed. There were the Takao sisters who were S-class and A-class heroes, the elder and younger sister respectively. One sister with the ability to use lightning and the other with the ability to make clean, concise, and precise cuts left a whole wave of monsters divided into two. One section with charred monsters and the other with cleanly cut up monster corpses. All was done by the sisters without breaking a sweat, all because they had unique abilities. This was the one thing Sugo wanted that she so lacked, despite her hunting and killing monsters. This made her feel sad and left behind, more accurately described as being not strong enough to protect all she wanted. She watched the sisters from behind a wall and not for long, the elder sister noticed her presence. She asks Sugo to show herself, remarking that she doesn't bite. Hearing this and sensing a warm invitation, Sugo comes out to converse with the sisters. They sense she's not looking okay and ask to show they care. Little did Sugo know that her worry for the lack of unique skill was evidently written on her face. The younger sister, Itsuki, asks her to take better care of herself and hurries off as her elder sister calls. Before she leaves, she hints to Sugo that her elder sister likes her. Sugo, wanting to confirm this, tries to ask but is interrupted by an answer, yes, from Ijiri affirming that she did have a fancy for Sugo. The group gets to the exit and meets a surprise, Oyamada fighting off monsters and showing off his power. The others compare him to a beast with bloodlust for killing. Seeing the B-class and below warriors, he takes the same route that Yasu took, insulting and asking Sugo why she brought weak members to hunt monsters with the Katihara group. Sugo yet again defends her classmates from the insults, hoping they all drop the power high soon. In an instant, the crowd is joined by Kirihara and a monster he was holding captive, torturing it so it screams to draw out even more monsters. After continuing this in what I have to admit looks like a very clever plan, Oyamada points out that it most likely wouldn't work, causing him to separate the monster's head from its body. A new addition, appearances, and faces never end as a new member joins the heroes. A strange woman with cat ears, instead of the goddess Vices herself. She introduces herself as the goddess's representative. She also informs them that she would be in charge of their safe return to the capital and their progression to the next phase of development, in the stead of the goddess and by her order. Oyamada, seeing her little structure and petite outline, bursts into a peal of insulting laughter, asking in a belittling manner if she truly thought she could order around heroes that are stronger than her. The representative, pissed at the foul mouth, accepts Oyamada's challenge as an invitation to fight, and decides to show him and the others why the goddess put her in charge. She calls out his name and remarks that he is the one with the foul mouth. This caused Oyamada to ask for her name, and trust me, I understand why he laughed. Her name was Nyantan Kikipat. Yeah, Oyamada wasn't wrong for thinking her name sounded like a cat. Kikipat decides to take this greeting and warning more seriously and in one strike, charges at him, weakening him and causing him to fall to the ground. After undoubtedly showing how strong she is, she proceeded to tell them they'll be journeying to the royal capital for the next phase in preparation to defeat the Demon Lord. A few days ago, the goddess summoned Nyantan to supervise the heroes in her stead, as she would be busy due to the new movements the Demon Lord was making. She also chose Nyantan because of the loyalty she had to the goddess. To prove and reiterate the loyalty she had, the goddess asked her to lick her feet, which Nyantan did without hesitation. While in the ceremony of loyalty and reverence, a messenger came in with urgent news, apologizing for disrupting the goddess's meeting. On the go-ahead of the goddess, he informs her of the news and she began to think about Civet and how he would have contributed to the development of the hero she intends to train. Soon her beautiful idea pops up and she dishes out orders to the messenger. He is to gather the 4 revered saints of the Alien Kingdom, the dragon killer from Uruza, the saber tiger group Touka ran into a while back, and Civet and the 5 dragon warriors. Nyantan informs the heroes that their dreaded and trying moments are near approaching, as they are likely to face the Demon Lord sooner than expected. Meanwhile, Touka still journeys to the Golden-Eyed Monster area with his trusted company, Seras and Pigimaru. He enlightens her more on the dismissal as a hero, where the goddess disposed of him. Turns out the abandoned ruins were just directly underneath the forest they were traveling, and he also tells her about the origin of the Azure Dragonstone and how he got it, which is from the corpse of the great mage himself, Anglin. This left Seras to wonder why such an accomplished and great man would be disposed of. Touka presses on with his plans and goals for revenge, saying he would destroy anything that stood in the way of him and his revenge, even if it meant killing people to get to the goddess. He understood that this might not fall in line with Seras' moral code or conduct, so he proceeds to apologize. Surprisingly, Seras is unbothered about his thirst for revenge and offers her full body and power towards his cause. Owing it to the fact that she has no loyalty or relevance to the Holy King and that he saved her from the White Walkers and the Dragon Warriors, she felt indebted to Touka and gave him her undivided loyalty. She held him in high esteem as a savior, high enough to want to call him a title so she doesn't mistakenly address him by his name. They arrive at a village in the middle of a festival, and soon enough, Touka is invited by one of the townsmen to join in on the fun. Before he does that, he checks out the new options his skill, Sleep, has, resulting from the increase to level 3. He also managed to test out Freeze on his journey there. Back to the village and his festival, Touka picks a mask he's interested in. The townsman provides him with the story behind the mask. It's inspired by the tales of the King of Flies. The King of Flies was a demon of ancient times who had an absurdly strong army and was the harbinger of chaos. The king and his subordinates are popular from the way they died, despite being demons and evil. Touka takes a liking to this mask and the mask of the king's subordinates, as he wasn't supporting the goddess and kind of is aligned to the demonic side. After all, he does want the goddess to grovel and be devastated and full of despair. When in the changing room as directed by the masked seller, he thinks of what he would answer if anyone were to ask what he did. After a good thought process, he settled with the King of Flies mercenary corps, posing as a mercenary. Meanwhile, in the Magnar Kingdom, there's a round table meeting behind closed doors, where the world leaders, the White Wolf King of Magnar, the Queen of Janata, the Magister King of Aruza, and Alien's Armor King, including the goddess, sit to discuss plans for the brewing war against the Demon Lord. They also wonder who would have annihilated the Black Dragon Knights and even humanity's strongest. The goddess isn't sure of the Magnar army, which is at the forefront of the battle. She asked the Mad Emperor, Falcon Dotane, a distinguished Alien Knight, if she could count on him when the time comes. The leaders of the countries are locked in a very important meeting at Magnar. The goddess is there too. They discuss the death of the 5 Dragon Knights and how it has shifted the balance of the kingdom's security. But most of all, they strategize on what to do when the Great Demon appears. The root of all evil, as he's called, gives them no choice but to rely on Alion's heroes from the other world. This isn't because the heroes are much more powerful than anyone in this world, but because the people of this world can be affected by the demon's miasma. The miasma stops people from using their full power, and this also affects people from the hero's lineage and deities. This must be why the heroes were summoned from the other world. They weren't just wanted, they were badly needed. As it turns out, Alien is the only kingdom with the means to summon those heroes. The other leaders ask the goddess to explain the situation to the heroes and train them. After all, the one who takes responsibility will be given a huge reward. The Mad Emperor cuts in to ask about the legend of the God Killer, but that would only distract them from the point of this meeting. Vices formally informs the leaders that the Great Demon's army recently captured the Night Wall and is now on the move. If the countries don't ally, they would be wiped out for sure. The White Wolf of Magnar addresses the elephant in the room. Could it really be Seras Ashrain who killed the 5 Dragon Warriors? The leaders are smart enough to suspect that there's someone else behind the death of the elite group. They must find the person who did it, so this person can join in their fight against the Demon Lord. That is, if the warriors weren't killed by demons themselves. Then again, there haven't been any reports about the demon sightings in southern Magnar. The death of the Dragon Knights is a big blow, but it doesn't leave the countries helpless to face the Demon King. Among those who can help are the 4 revered saints, the Dragon Slayer, the Heroic Sword, and the Apostles of Isis. The leaders are also informed that a group of people are going about taking credit for killing the Dragon Warriors. Even in this world, people try to reap what they didn't sow. According to them, they killed Civet and the others with their magic spells. This group of Black Dragon Slayers is a group of sorcerers called the Ashinto. Meanwhile, Mimori Touka and Seras Ashrain are finally in Urza's royal capital, Monroy. The first thing Touka does is hide Piggymaru. He might draw more attention to them. During their traveling period, Touka and Seras made a stop at 3 villages. Those villagers talked a lot about the death of the Dragon Knights and Seras' disappearance. Urza might be a little happy about the death of the Knights because the strong Knights of the neighboring country are gone. No matter what, they were still a potential threat. Touka asks whether the goddess's mediation is the only reason for Urza still standing strong. According to Seras, it's only one of the reasons. She tells him about the man from Urza named the Dragon Slayer. According to her, Urza hires the man even in times of peace, just so they can show off as they should. The Dragon Slayer is really strong, but there's no chance that he can drive out the Dragon Warriors alone. He's also rumored to be a lazy man that avoids conflict with the Dragon Warriors. Now that they're in town, Touka suggests that they get an inn for the meantime. Of course, they must get separate rooms, but Seras cuts in and suggests one room to save money. There's that tension again. After discussing it for a while, the companions decide to share a room. Touka registers at the inn as a mercenary who is yet to register with the Mercenary Guild. The man asks whether he's in town for the Blood Colosseum, and Touka plays along. After all, he'd heard stories about the Colosseum from Seras. Blood Colosseum is an arena where mercenaries and slaves kill each other. It's a bit similar to the Colosseum back in ancient Rome. It's managed by 2 organizations, the Mercenary Guild and Urza's Duke. It started as a means to evaluate warriors who wanted to join the Mercenary Guild, but currently it's more of an entertainment sport. That being said, the traditions remain the same. There are rewards for winning battles. Lots of mercenaries enter it to earn money. Famous warriors would also earn their owners through money, so they aren't sold off to the Mercenary Guild and remain warriors in the Blood Colosseum. Seras Ashrain is really like an encyclopedia with her knowledge of this world. It's a good thing she's with Touka. She also tells him a thing or two about the Mercenary Guild, a reliable organization for mercenaries who travel to many countries. According to her, the Mercenary Guild together with the Magician Guild is very influential in every country. The Mercenary Guild also has something to do with the Mill's Ruins exploration. Speaking of Mill's Ruins, Touka wants to investigate the black egg he found in the ruins, but according to Seras, non-royal capital citizens need a permit to access the library. He decides to wait till they get to the Witch of Taboo's place. Later on, the companions head to the bar for something to eat, but they also intend to hear a little gossip. Again, the people talk about the Black Dragon Knight's annihilation. Oh, this one again? Seras and Touka are settled until the gossips say that Seras Ashrain killed the knights. That's one way to get our elf fears to stand even more. The other man argues that Seras died in the fight and that the ones who killed the knights are the Ashinto group. These guys again? They obviously just want to promote their magic spells. But then again, they should take credit. It'd get the suspicion off Saras's back for a while. Speak of the devil, eh? The Ashinto group comes into the bar and starts to flex their newfound fame. They're the new talk of the town, and it looks like they enjoy it. Meanwhile, the people in conversation bring up the topic of one who hasn't been mentioned. According to them, there's one more person who might have defeated the 5 Black Dragon Knights. It's the Blood Colosseum's leopard, the strongest blood champion in Monroy. What gets Touka's attention is when they mention that she once met the Witch of Taboos. Quickly, Touka buys them more drinks and asks for information on this leopard. If there's one thing that gets a man talking, it's more drinks. They tell him everything they know. The witch is located in the Golden Demon Zone, and she's rumored to be a dark elf. As for the rest of the information, the leopard would know better. Touka sees that it's a good idea to meet this leopard, and he asks for a means to meet her. But it turns out that he doesn't need it. Eve Speed, the blood champion at that moment, walks into the bar. Fate could not have written a better script for Touka. Touka cannot believe his luck. This is his best chance to have a conversation with Eve Speed, the were-leopard and blood champion. But he must tread with caution. There's no way of knowing just how dangerous she is. He doesn't want to show his skills, so he tells Saras to be ready for anything. He goes over to the counter and offers to get Eve a drink, but she isn't in the mood for pleasantries, so he introduces himself as a mercenary named Hadi. She's gracious enough to introduce herself, but she can tell that he's not there just because she's a blood warrior. Touka asks about the location of the Witch of Taboos. Eve denies knowing the exact location. What she tells Touka is that she once wandered the Golden Monster area and might have died if someone didn't help her with magic. She joked that it was the Witch of Taboos, and apparently, the joke became a rumor and spread. She denies knowing the witch's location and also warns Touka that the Golden Monster area isn't for humans. Since he can't expose his skills in public, he goes back to meet and eavesdropping Saras. It's a good thing that Saras can tell when someone is lying because she immediately tells Touka that Eve completely lied about not knowing the witch's exact location. Okay, now they must get the information from her somehow. Later that night, Touka and Saras discuss how to get the information from Eve. Saras advises Touka to gather information about the warrior first. Then they might find something they could give her in exchange for the information. What they know for now is that the Blood Warriors need a lot of money to buy back their freedom. Well, as far as money goes, Touka has something of high value he could offer her. They call that Plan B. Plan A is to get information the next day at the Blood Colosseum. The next day, they spread out to ask different people about Eve. According to what they found out, Eve was originally a slave, sold to the Colosseum by a slave trader. At that time, the audience was starting to get bored with the fights, so the management introduced the were-leopard to spice things up. She seemed to know how to get the crowd moving, and she brought back excitement to the Blood Colosseum. Apparently, she hasn't lost a match in nearly 3 years. She's just that good. The juicy news is that the next day is Eve's final battle as a Blood Warrior. It means that she almost earned enough money to buy back her freedom. Money wouldn't be useful in negotiation then. Saras tells Touka that from what she heard, Eve earned the money to buy herself back 2 years ago. For the past 2 years, she worked to buy someone else back from the Colosseum. This person is a kid, and she isn't even a were-leopard. The situation is a little more complicated than Touka would like. He wonders whether he should just enter the monster area alone. Maybe he should buy her as a guard after she regains her freedom. Saras interrupts his train of thought with one more bombshell. She obtained much more information than he did, and he's curious as to how she did it. She says she went to an information broker and she couldn't take Touka along because they don't like newbies. As long as she got the job done, Touka doesn't mind. Now onto the bombshell. Saras says that most of the previous strongest warriors died after their last match. Normally it would be because they finally met their match, but there seems to be more to it. The Duke who manages the Blood Colosseum does dirty things that puts the warrior at a huge disadvantage. What better way to introduce a popular warrior than to make him or her kill the previous warrior? This means that the Duke would certainly try to get Eve killed the next day. Touka finally sees an opening in his negotiation. Later that evening, Touka intercepts Eve at the Blood Colosseum. Eve recognizes him from the pub, but she quickly denies knowing the witch again. Easy girl, we're yet to get there. Touka tells her that he can tell she's lying. He asks whether she owes the witch some favor or gratitude. Eve gets unsettled and asks what the young man wants. You're in danger, and I can't see you die, Touka says. Touka and Eve discuss in the shadows. Touka comes clean and tells her about the Duke's plan for tomorrow's battle. Okay, stranger danger, why should she trust this man? He tells her that he must keep her safe because he needs information about the Witch of Taboos. Eve knows he can see through her lies now, so she can't hand over false information and leave. She asks for proof, but Touka has none. However, she knows that Duke Xuan can dispose of her. It's not a wild stretch. Touka suggests that she abandons the battle and escapes with the little girl she's planning to rescue. How does this man know so much? She gets aggressive at the mention of the girl, but Touka assures her that he has no wicked intentions. As for tomorrow's battle, she insists on seeing it out. She must buy her freedom by winning the battle, or else the Duke would chase her to the ends of the earth. And in that case, the mercenary guild would get involved and try to collect the bounty placed on her head. She wouldn't mind being chased down, but for the little girl's sake, she must regain their freedom by law. Touka suggests that she could hide with the witch if no one else knew where she lived. Then they would never find her. It's not a terrible plan, but the were-leopard insists that the interior isn't a place for humans. She just said interior. She must really know about this place. Touka promises to take care of the girl in exchange for Eve escorting them to the witch's house. Eve looks at the young man and his companion. Saros looks like she could hold her own in battle, but there's nothing about Touka that looks like a fighter. Touka lets out a smirk and reveals to Eve that he killed the Black Dragon Knights. As proof, he shows her an example of his abnormal skills by paralyzing her for some time. If that doesn't work, nothing else will. Later on, the company of three part ways, as Eve goes to think about Touka's offer. Saros and Touka talk, and Touka reveals that he intends to make Eve a comrade for future benefits. Even if Eve survives tomorrow's battle, there's no future for her in Monroy. Even someone as naive as her would soon realize it. According to the information they received, Duke Zuan is a toxic guy. He would find some other way to get rid of Eve, if only there was someone who controlled toxic poisons to save her. Meanwhile, Eve sees the mercenary guildmaster in a conversation with the Duke. It's nothing out of the ordinary. Tomorrow's battle is really important for the management. She's about to leave when her name pops up in the conversation. She listens attentively and everything Touka said turns out to be true. Her opponent for tomorrow's battle is also there, and they discuss using dirty tricks to ensure her death. The plan is to make her opponent kill her and wear her pelt. He would be called the Leopard Killer. If she manages to win, the Duke tells the guildmaster that he still plans to kill her, just as Touka thought. As for the little girl that Eve cares so much about, Duke Zuan has special plans for her. She's a dark elf and the child of a former slave. She's growing up so fast and pretty, so the Duke intends to forcefully take the girl as soon as she's old enough. As for Eve, the Duke says he sees her as nothing more than a beast. There's no way he would have anything to do with such a low creature. Touka sees Eve return before he even leaves the place. She confirms that everything he said is true. She also agrees to forfeit tomorrow's battle and escape with the Dark Elf. From there, they would head to the Witch of Taboo's house. Meanwhile, the Dark Elf, Liz, is abused and maltreated where she works. Her boss constantly beats her, and the customers don't make things any easier. For every mistake she makes, she receives hard punishments. The only reason she is holding on is because of Eve, whom she now sees as a big sister. The customers in the bar discuss the young elf and how she is growing up to be physically appealing. They smack their lips in anticipation of the day she'd mature. Her boss comes in and tells them off, saying that Liz is in her custody and must not be ruined. It almost sounds like her boss is a kind woman, but she's quite the opposite. Just as she does at every slight opportunity, she beats Liz in the shop. Then she screams in Liz's ears, causing her to feel physical and mental trauma. This is too much, even for the customers, who start to leave one by one. Did they leave because of the maltreatment or because the strongest blood warrior just stepped in? Eve comes in with a frown on her face and sends the wicked boss flying with a hard punch. She points her sword at the shop owner. The terrified woman begs for her life, saying that she was forced to do everything she did to Liz. She promised to keep her mouth shut about their escape. Eve leaves the helpless woman on the ground and goes out with Liz. She really is so naive. How could she just believe this wicked woman? Eve tells Liz about her plans to escape, and Liz is happy to go anywhere with her big sister. Back in the shop, the cruel lady has no intention of keeping her promise. Thankfully, Touka is there to pick up the slack. There's no way this one would escape with her life, and Touka makes her die in the most painful way possible. A woman that mentally traumatizes innocent girls has no place in Touka's world. After his little sideshow, he goes outside to meet his new comrades. The group is getting bigger by the day. Touka introduces himself, with his real name this time, to the group, and everyone else introduces themselves, including Pikimaru. There's no time for formalities, they must escape now. Touka leads the group to the horses he prepared in the forest. Eve and Liz would share one, while Touka and Saras would take the other. Before they go, Eve questions Touka's intentions with the Witch of Taboos. Touka promises not to harm her as long as she doesn't try to harm him. He shows Eve the spellbook that he wants to be translated. At this point, Eve realizes that she's a naive woman. She looks at how all her poor decisions have put her in danger, and then she placed herself under Touka's command. According to her, he might be the only one she can trust. Don't be so sure, lady. Touka asks why she trusts him. She points out that he could have attempted to get the information through other means. For example, he could have tortured her under paralysis back then. Also, letting Liz accompany them and volunteering to protect her is a sign of a trustworthy person. Touka smirks and then points out that he might have done it for his selfish interests. Even at that, she still surrenders her trust to him. The new companions climb their horses to ride away. There's that physical tension between Touka and Saras again. The tension could cut through metal. Saras informs the group that they're a day and a half away from the monster zone, but if they go around the anti-demon castle, it'd take half an extra day. She also mentions something about human-faced monsters that are very dangerous. It's a rare but recognized sighting. The reason it's so rare is probably because few people live to tell the story. The monsters are known to stay away from outside places. Touka thinks back to the Soul Eater. He must be one of the human-faced monsters. No wonder it's called a danger zone. Saras then asks why Touka really wants Eve on their team. He must be kind for making the sacrifice. Touka says he's not about the sacrifice. Eve's battle skills and monster area experience would be good for their team. But most importantly, seeing Eve and Liz on their side would help the witch listen to them. Just like the witch, Liz is a dark elf and they just rescued her. That must leave a good impression. Saros is impressed. That's really smart from Touka. But deep down, Touka knows that he rescued Liz because he knows the pain of being abused as a child. The riding companions are interrupted by the neighs and hooves of horses in the distance. They are being chased. Eve confirms that a man suspiciously looked at her while she made her escape. That man was Muaji, the leader of the Shinto group. Meanwhile, the sorcerer stopped to examine the hoof prints. Muaji sees 2 horses and intelligently concludes that Eve couldn't have prepared 2 horses in such a short time. Someone is helping her. The group puts up lights for the second team to follow. It's time for the Shinto to show their worth to the Duke. Meanwhile, Touka and his companions are still on the run. Eve offers to stay back and let the rest escape. After all, she is the one whom they chase after. Touka refuses. They are too many for her to fight against. He looks in the distance and notices that the pursuers have a second team. He stops the horses and readies for an attack against the groups. Meanwhile, as they follow Muaji's advice, the Duke's mercenaries finally spot the light heading up north. They excitedly follow it, thinking that they must have caught their prey. The decoy from Touka worked, for the first team at least. Touka can tell from the mercenaries' conversation that another group is coming up fast. That's probably the Shinto group, as they didn't have any warriors. Touka instructs Eve to hide and protect Liz while he and Saros would handle the situation. He confirms from Saros that Muaji's curse magic seems a bit fictitious, but he still managed to make everyone believe. The man is very clever and he's predicted their moves so far. Muaji must have known Eve would head north because of the Witch of Taboos, but the young man has a plan to help them win. He takes out his mask. It's time to begin. The Shinto riders halt at the orders of Muaji. He orders the lights to be put out and looks around the area for clues. He sees a broken branch that looks like it was broken by a horse. The smart leader can tell that the first group already went up north, so the group must have gone through this path. No, that's probably a trap. A group that good wouldn't leave such a careless clue. Muaji is even more confident that someone is helping even Liz. It's a smart person, but he's seen through him or her. He calls on the person to come out from hiding. Nothing would save this person, not even the trees the person is hiding behind. She knows she's already caught, so Saros comes from behind the tree with her mask on, a mask of the subordinate of the Fly King. Muaji knows the mask very well. Muaji proposes that Saros hands the refugees to him, so she won't be attacked. He also invites her to join the Shinto group, as they could use a skillful warrior. If she refuses, he threatens to rain curses on her, curses that killed the Black Dragon Knights. Saros accepts their terms, but asks them to promise the safety of the captives. Muaji brags about his influence on the Duke and promises that no harm would come to them. With her wishes fulfilled, she asks the whole group to follow her to where Eve and Liz are. The group starts moving, but Muaji stops them. Why would she want everyone to come closer? Why can't she bring the prisoners out instead? Or ask a few people to come with her? He concludes that she must be scheming something that involves him getting within range. Immediately, he instructs the groups to stay out of range and prepare for an attack. Touka is hiding behind the forest trees, just as Muaji predicted. Has this finally come down to a battle of wits? Muaji continues to brag about the Assassin Guild, the lost guild of old. The Assassin Guild, as the name implies, was a group of assassins that were feared by all. The otherworldly heroes from old, after taking out the main reasons they were summoned, took out the Assassin Guild as they made it their new evil. Lost in the sands of time with only the descendants of members of the guild retaining knowledge of their ways, acts, and skills, the Assassin Guild was forgotten until Muaji decided to improvise and improve on their skills and name. He named the new group the Shinto. They improved on the poison and assassination skills in the bid to feign having the ability to lay curses. The Assassin Guild is known for their skill of inflicting sicknesses, use of poison, and even death without leaving a trace leading to them. Muaji improving this skill made it possible for the masses to believe that the Shinto could inflict curses on the people. To sell this theory and also instill fear and respect in the hearts of the people, he took credit for Touka's annihilation of the Dragon Knights. With the people believing this, he got the attention of Duke Xuan, which leads to this moment where the Shinto are showing their skill and worth. The only thing that could stop his bragging was what Saros did next, revealing her true identity as Saros Ashrain, the runaway general. Muaji was fazed by this discovery, but as a smart and wise person, he had plans for unexpected strong foes already. Well, not necessarily this particular occurrence of Saros Ashrain, but his additions to the Shinto takes care of Saros. Muaji could also decipher that Saros wasn't the one who took out the 5 Dragon Knights, and she also isn't able to pull off such an elite trap he had seen anticipated for him. He knew that there was a second individual that has credit for all these feats and protecting Eve and her sister. Unfazed, Muaji explains why he isn't bothered about this mystery man, Mimori. His newest additions to the Shinto, the strongest brothers Burga and his elder brother, Vargon, were his countermeasures. These brothers were stronger than Zalash of the White Walkers who were after Saros a while back. That is when she met Mimori. Zalash, being the strongest of the White Walkers, did not hold a candle in terms of strength to Burga even though he was the apex of the White Walkers. Another reason Muaji was confident that he was in control was the fact that the Shinto had a detached group of about 15 persons sent to the woods behind Saros, intending to take out whoever she had waiting out there. Muaji was confident of his control of the situation as anyone as smart in this case would be. Seeing that Saros seemed helpless, he went further to ask her to bring him Eve and Liz quickly and he would take her in. He went on about his lustful thoughts and what he would do to her in sessions he called the Blessing. Seras, who's left with no options, calls out to Touka, who comes out after building his connection to Pigemaru and uses his abnormal status skill of paralysis, has the entire group in the middle of his palm. This all went as he had predicted it would, and Muaji fell deep in Touka's neatly planted trap. This wasn't the physical trap Muaji avoided, it was a grander one. The trap was one of the mind, luring him into doom while Muaji thought he had the trap all figured out. Using Muaji's intelligence as bait, he asked Seras to make it obvious that they were being led. She was trying to get them into the woods. This would trigger Muaji to think she had traps planted in the woods, or that the second person working with her was waiting for them to get within his or her attack range. Then when Muaji thinks about this and it looks like he had uncovered her plan and she's now rendered helpless, he would get the sense of being almighty and awesome. This would serve as self-poison for Muaji, as this almighty feeling would inhibit his thinking, blinding him from seeing Touka's true plan and his connection to Pigemaru. A few moments ago, Touka encountered the detached Ashinto group and took them out using paralysis. After discussing with Eve and her sister, they part ways. The group was strong and skilled, but they are nothing compared to the 5 Dragon Knights. If Touka could take out Civet Gartland and do it so easily, then this bunch was like cutting through butter for him. Back to the current happenings. After taking out most of the members of the Ashinto with paralysis, Touka walks away from Muaji as he loses interest in a dying human. Muaji, on the other hand, cannot believe that he has been outsmarted and someone as wise as him would meet his demise so soon. He tries to reach out to Touka to most likely beg for mercy or strike a deal, but Touka walked away with Seras, engaged in a different conversation and paying little attention to the dying Muaji. Seras apologizes to Touka for showing and revealing her true self without his permission, as it wasn't part of the plan. They soon reunite with Eve and they figure out what to do next. The troop of soldiers that had followed the false trail were coming back due to the commotion the dying Ashinto caused. Touka tries to connect with Pigemaru to face them, but the creature has its limits and was tired. Eve felt indebted to Touka as he protected them, so she decided this time to act as the vanguard, facing the troops and protecting the group, as expected of the strongest blood warrior. Touka asks Eve if there's any special person to look out for in the Duke's army that would soon approach them. She could only think of one, the captain of the Duke's private army, Castello. He was said to be the strongest after the Dragon Knights and is rumored to have been once a magic knight. He was the only one they should specifically worry about. 3 troops of the Duke's army attack them in waves, with a third coming from behind. Liz stays with Seras so she doesn't distract her sister and Touka in battle. The battling duo take out the first squad of elite soldiers with ease, scaring the second wave. Then comes Duke Xuan and Castello, with Castello charging at them and promising to hand Eve's fur to the Duke. Touka uses Dark to seize his vision, and in one strike, Eve cuts Castello down. Touka attacks the rest of the army with Berserk so he could no longer use paralysis. The skill had reached its limit on the number of targets, so he improvised. The skill Berserk caused the members of the army to kill each other, and for those that tried to escape, Touka asked Eve to kill them off as they were straining his skill. Eve shows what an excellent warrior she is as she repeatedly kills off soldiers with single strikes. The number of paralyzed individuals reduced as some of the Ashinto members died off. The last troop surrounds them, putting them in the middle of an attack force. Eve is excited that she gets to fight like this again after finding fights boring. She thanks Touka for making this possible, and together they take out all the soldiers around them. She moves towards the paralyzed soldiers like black lightning, cutting them down with precision and skill. With just the Duke left, they had completely won this battle. The Duke tries to leave with his pride as he threatens them that he had to retreat for now but will surely kill them the next time they meet. This made Touka ask if the Duke was foolish. Did he really think they'd just watch him go? Touka paralyzed the Duke, making Xuan face reality. After Touka paralyzes Lord Xuan, Eve kills him, telling him that she had no problem with him framing her but was a bad idea on his part to say he would lay his hands on Liz. Touka then asks her if she has settled her matter, to which she gives a positive reply. Shortly after, Sebastian and Liz appear from their hiding place, sensing that all is well. Later, Touka asks Seras to take Liz with her and make preparations for their departure, as Eve and him have some things to take care of. She decides to capture the horses still wandering around close by while she's at it. Touka also asks her to get a certain thing from her bag, which she does. Liz, yearning to be useful, volunteers to help Seras. Seras then kindly asks her to carry some of the baggage. Touka then tells Eve to take her time to help tend to Liz's wounds, and Eve replies that it's only her responsibility to do so. Touka also tells her that he and Seras will help her during the journey, to which she thanks him. Later, Eve asks Touka what they'll be doing, to which Touka pulls out a chunk of ice with an insect frozen inside. Touka then goes on to explain that it was what he got from using the freeze skill to freeze a living insect. He goes on to explain the nature of the skill, saying it is non-lethal, has a limit of 3, cannot be stacked with other skills, and has 300 days of continuous effect and is irreversible. A very hard skill to use. He then asks Eve to hit it with a nearby warhammer with the intent to smash it. She hits it with a powerful blow and is shocked to see that the chunk of ice is still in one piece, despite the strike having enough power and a good striking position. Touka then further explains that if the freeze skill is used on living things, it becomes indestructible, saying that the first time he tried it, it wouldn't break no matter what he did and was completely impervious to heat. He believes the ice might not melt until it completes the 300-day limit. Touka then brings out another chunk of ice and asks Eve to try smashing it. At first, it seems no different from the first one, but believing he has something in mind, she strikes it and it completely shatters. Eve points out that the sound and hit of the second chunk feel different from the first one. Touka explains that freeze can be used on matter, and while they were the same insect, the crucial difference was that the first one was frozen while alive and the second one was a dead body. Apparently, it categorizes dead bodies as matter, which is why they're not indestructible. Moreover, when crushed, it breaks away into tiny pieces that can be blown away by the wind, and when destroyed, the counter for the limit decreases. Eve then asks what he plans to do, to which he says he's thinking of a way to dispose of the corpses of the Ashinto. When Eve asks why, he states that he wants to make the Ashinto the murderers of the 5 Dragon Warriors forever, explaining that as a sorcerer group that propagated themselves as the one who killed the 5 Dragon Warriors that suddenly vanished, the world would continue to think there's a possibility they could have done it, and as long as they didn't deny it, the possibility would remain, and those who want to investigate the truth would continuously search for suspects that don't exist, acting as a smokescreen. Eve then realizes that this was the reason he didn't want any fleeing survivors. While Touka warns Eve that the crushing of the bodies won't be a comfortable task, she assures him that there's no need to worry about her and urges them to finish before pursuers arrive, telling them to leave a nearby fly mask as the only eyewitness. Touka then thinks about the legend of the Fly King, about how he revolted against his creator and chose his path. Thinking it's a name that suits him, he thinks about how he wouldn't follow the Fly King in the part of losing his subordinates. As for the end of the Fly King, he thinks about the 2 different endings to the story due to the difference in interpretation and wonders what the end of his journey would be. Magisterial King Jin is shocked by the news that the Ashinto had disappeared, wondering if Zuan got into trouble with them, saying he's warned him countless times to be careful while dealing with them, stating he wanted to have a pawn who claimed to kill the 5 Dragon Warriors to display their power to other countries. Afraid, he wonders how he'll report the mysterious disappearance to the goddess, especially because he took it upon himself to expose the Ashinto as someone trusted, so much that the disciple they sent to Arusa was called back. Fearfully, he decides that he needs to find the Ashinto and make negotiations with them again, believing they annihilated Duke Zuan's private army, including Costello, and that there's no reason to doubt their ability to kill the 5 Dragon Warriors, adding that it would be difficult to defeat them even if the Magic Knights are involved. The messenger then asks if there's anything wrong, to which King Jin replies that while he's shocked by the death of King Zuan, he's otherwise fine. When the messenger asks how they would report the Ashinto case to Allion, King Jin tells them to search for the Ashinto no matter what, telling him they must report it to the goddess. When the messenger asks about Eve and Liz, referring to them as the Wereleopard and the Dark Elf, he bursts out in anger, telling him to ignore them, calling them weak and cowards and saying they'll die somewhere in the wild, and telling him to focus on searching for the Ashinto and to use everything to track down their every trace. Later, Vices receives word that the sorcerer group killed Duke Zuan and disappeared, calling it a frightening case, albeit with a relaxed, somewhat playful expression on her face. She then begins to question the existence of curses, saying she still can't believe in them, or wondering if she doesn't know anything about them. She then asks Nantan if she knows anything about it, to which she gives a negative response. Vices then begins to think aloud about how scary it would be, especially if it fell into the hands of the Mad Emperor. She then talks about not being able to send Nantan back to Arusa since she has an important role. We are then introduced to the 4 revered saints, siblings descended from the blood of heroes, said to be stronger than the saint in Jonato. The eldest son of the group tells Vices to currently worry about the army of the great demon emperor, which is increasingly active. The second son then laughs heartedly, pointing out that Vices is surprisingly a warrior and that ultimately, Vices won't be affected by the influence of the root of all evil, regardless of if they fight the Ashinto or the 5 Dragon Warriors. Vices then playfully asks if there's anything wrong with that, saying that while she's sure he meant no offense, the words made her feel a bit uneasy. A servant enters the room, informing the goddess that Master Banewolf has arrived. Banewolf apologizes for being late, but Vices tells him that it's no problem and that she's glad he came, calling him a dragon slayer. Later in the Allion Kingdom Castle Garden, Asaki talks to Poppo about the tense atmosphere in the castle. Poppo gives a simple response to which Asaki teases her about all nutrients going to her breasts, rendering her unable to use her head anymore, leaving her flustered. It is then explained that Asaki's words are getting more powerful. This is because despite her being a rank B hero, she acquired a unique skill known as Queen Bee, the skill to enhance the abilities of multiple targets to a certain degree for a limited amount of time, putting her group ahead when it comes to group battles. Yatsumoto Hiro's group is also getting stronger, but being an A-ranked hero is more of a one-man group and only he stands out and gets stronger. Ayaka's group, on the other hand, shares their experience points equally, therefore her friends level up and acquire skills. The skills they acquire are common skills, which can be acquired provided that you are a hero. These common skills can be grouped into 5: attack system, defense system, healing system, enhanced ability system, and abnormal state system. The skills are unlocked when you level up. When something is unlocked, the skill tree will change, and the higher the skill is in the skill tree, the higher the skill's rank. However, the abnormal state system skills are currently useless and obscure. Unique skills also have their level, and when this level increases, the ability evolves. It is then explained that Ayaka holds the role of being the vanguard and her friends using defense skills to protect and support from behind, and only comes to deal the finishing blow when the monster is on the brink of death. However, although she's a level 115 S-rank hero, she still has not unlocked a unique skill, being the only one not to do so. While she does have special skills that allow her to be the vanguard alone, she can't deny that those skills are weaker than unique skills, thinking to herself that she has to work harder. While this is happening, Vices approaches the crowd of students in the garden, followed by the 4 revered saints, Wolf, and some other figures. She addresses the students, first pointing out that their levels have increased tremendously and thanking them for their hard work, and that while she is happy from the bottom of her heart, they still have not acquired combat skills, so she has gathered some warriors from all over to train them, with the Drunken Sword Party being in charge of Asaki's group, the Dragon Slayer being in charge of Hiro's group, Nyantan being in charge of the Takao sisters, and the 4 revered saints in charge of Kirihara's group. Then Vices begins to leave, but is stopped by Hijiri, pointing out that a teacher wasn't assigned to Ayaka's group, saying that the 5 Dragon Warriors should have been in charge of Kirihara's group, but due to their death, there are not enough teachers for the heroes now. At first, Vices suggests that Ayaka teaches her group the ancient martial arts she has, adding that was what she expected her to do, but Hijiri believes it's a bad idea to do so. Vices then apologizes, saying she took some measures because she believes in Ayaka's ability, but admits she can't call back any of her apostles from other countries to take care of her group. She then asks if there's anyone who wishes to take care of Ayaka's group, promising to pay them in installments, but warning that their work would be doubled. No one answers, but then Wolf volunteers, believing it's best to increase their survival probabilities since they're heroes with bright futures, and promises to do everything he can to train them all without lowering the quality. Vices then announces that they will be moving around the ruins to defeat the Golden Eye monsters and level up to kill the enemies and survive. She informs them that the Demon Emperor's side is moving actively, telling them that the number of monsters gathered at the Knight's Wall is overwhelming and that the next war with the Great Demon Emperor will exceed the previously expected scale, and therefore, she would like them all to brace themselves for the coming war. Vices is watching the students train, saying that while it isn't perfect, training seems to be going well and thanks everyone for their hard work. She adds that as long as they fulfill the conditions she has set, she will leave it to them how to accomplish the goal, prioritizing results over the process. When one of the 4 revered saints asks her what's wrong, she explains that while they're in a hurry to get the heroes to learn practical skills, they must also continue to increase their levels. However, with the Great Demon Emperor's army on the move, they can't afford to travel to the ruins in other countries, so tomorrow they will depart for the Golden Monster Zone. Touka, Ceres, Eve, and Liz are traveling through the Golden Monster Zone. Eve, being somewhat familiar with the place, says she only knows as far as the place she and Liz reached last time, a place where they could get drinking water and some old buildings where they could hide. Touka reasons that the only reason Eve and the others fled from the Demon Zone was because of the monsters, so for the time being, as long as they could defeat the monsters, they could go deeper without any problems. Touka asks if Liz is afraid, to which she replies that she's fine and thanks him for his concern. He then compliments her, saying she's now a fine member of the group. Liz then cheerfully says that she'll be happy anywhere provided she's with Eve. Eve then apologizes to her for being stupid, but Touka assures her that if anything, her very existence is Liz's salvation. She then smiles, saying she's no match for him. As the group gets closer to their destination, Touka is unsure whether they should continue in a straight line since the map doesn't show the terrain in detail, adding that depending on the terrain, they might have to go the other way around. Then, out of nowhere, a Golden Knight appears and attacks them. Touka, with Eve's help, then casts a paralyze spell on the monster. Seeing that it's effective, he also casts a poison and sleep spell on the monster, incapacitating it. Touka then points out that it's much weaker compared to the monsters he's killed, saying that in every aspect, the monsters in the ruins were far superior and that it seems unlikely that monsters in this zone are generally ridiculously strong. As they continue their journey, Touka mentions his encounter with the 2-headed were-leopard to Ceres, asking her the difference between it and Eve. Ceres explains that Golden Knight monsters were created by the root of all evil and that there's a strong theory it has something to do with the element of evil he possesses. Touka then asks if an ordinary demon can become a golden-eyed monster, to which Ceres replies that while it may not be impossible, it's unheard of. She explains that many of the non-golden-eyed monsters went into hiding because a hero warned of the danger of them turning golden-eyed, and so there was an operation to wipe them out. She further explains that non-human races which can speak and understand human language were classified as demi-humans, including elves, and while many demi-humans still hide from humans, elves often have friendly relationships with humans. Moving away from the subject, Ceres suggests a name for the group, the name being the Fly King Squadron, to which Touka agrees. Later, they encounter another monster, which Touka easily defeats. Eve marvels at his prowess, stating that the first time she encountered it, all she could do was escape. Suddenly, Touka's BG begins to rattle, indicating the presence of a demon, and immediately tells everyone to tighten their guard. He then brings out an egg from his bag, which Ceres recognizes as the one he got from the Mirazu ruins. All eyes are on the egg as it begins to hatch. As the Fly King Squadron group have zero ideas of what could be inside, they take a couple steps back. The egg has a crack and then two. Before long, it starts to give off light till everywhere is completely illuminated. When the light clears, Touka. And yet, they could never have predicted that Touka's egg from the Mirazu ruins would turn into this. The horse towers above them, looking fierce and majestic. This must be its true form. And then, Touka announces the inevitable. It seems like they just found the newest member of the Fly King Squadron, and it's a really interesting one. Just like what happened when the horse was in its medium size, it doesn't seem aggressive at all. If anything, it behaves like a regular horse when they want to be pet. This is why Touka can draw near the horse and touch it. Despite its large appearance, it's still only a horse. It behaves so differently towards Touka. Is it possible that Touka is now seen as a parent? Well, in that case, Sarah suggests that Touka should name the horse. That's not a bad idea at all. Touka takes a while to think about the perfect name for his horse, and then he calls it Slay. It's a fitting name for a majestic horse, and Slay seems to love it, as he lets out a neigh of approval. As with other additions to the group members take turns in introducing themselves. With the introduction done, Touka needs to be sure of what he's working with. He approaches Slay and asks if he can return to its little form. And just like magic, the majestic beast becomes a cute creature again. This means that Touka can always change its form by simply injecting magic energy into the orb. Sweet. Siras points out that in its second form, the horse can easily handle most of their luggage, making it easier for them. The third form might prove useful while fighting monsters in the future. They might have just struck the jackpot here. Meanwhile, Slay licks Siras' cheek as a sign of endearment. This is a good sign. She would be doing the riding after all, since Touka doesn't know how to ride a horse. Touka offers to wipe the stain from Siras' cheeks, and that tension comes back in full force. I mean, seriously guys? Siras eventually lets him do it, and while doing it, he commends the skin. Siras points out that the skin is beautiful because the horse was just born. But Touka isn't talking about the horse's skin. Really smooth, Touka. Meanwhile, back at Allion Kingdom's castle, everyone has left for the Golden Monster area. Well, everyone but the Dragon Slayer. For some reason, the goddess opts to leave him at the castle. He isn't too happy with this decision and confronts the goddess. She brushes it aside, saying that the castle still needed protection, and who is better to protect it than the Dragon Slayer himself. She points out that the Drunken Sword Party, Nyantan, and the Four Revered Saints are already following the heroes. He must settle for his own task. The man doesn't buy into any of the goddess's crap. He accuses her of dropping him because he chose to mentor Ayaka Sogo. Bane, the Dragon Slayer, is a very direct man. He asks if she wants someone from Ayaka's group to die. After all, a broken heart would be the easiest to manipulate, wouldn't it? Manipulating Ayaka so easily would increase the risk. Speaking of manipulation, the goddess cuts in, asking Bane about his father. She reminds him how he joined the Magic Knights because of his father's special illness. The medicine he needs can only be found in the mines controlled by Urza. She says that at her command, the medicine could continuously be freely provided for Bane's father. But for that to happen, the Dragon Slayer would have to stay in line. Talk about first-class manipulation. Meanwhile, the heroes are finally at the Golden Monster area. It's now time to level up in preparation for the Great Demon's army. The heroes from the other world are in the Golden Monster zone. Just as Eve once told Touka, the place is too dangerous for humans. The teachers seem to share a similar sentiment as they increase their awareness and prepare to defend the heroes from possible attacks. The Four Revered Saints ask the heroes to back off a bit, but a couple of them find this very insulting. With how much they've trained, do these guys think they are some newbies? The complainers moan about being restricted to weak monsters in other areas. It's about time to test the strength of these monsters. It's always the weak ones, isn't it? Before long, the group is attacked by several monsters, and most of the heroes are helpless against them. The teachers have to step up to fight these monsters. The eldest son of the Revered Saints take one, Apostle Nyantan takes another one, and Abyss takes on another monster. It's time to show these heroes a little practical demonstration. And so they charge at the monsters, avoiding all their dangerous attacks while searching for openings to attack them. Their skills are impressive, but what stands out is their confidence while attacking such dangerous monsters. These guys weren't bluffing about being super strong. Apostle Nyantan is particularly impressive against these monsters. She evades every attack in swift motions that the heroes can barely see with their eyes, and then she gracefully cuts through the monster like it's simple training. The goddess really has a powerful apostle in Nyantan. The other fighters aren't slacking either. After watching them move, the heroes wonder why these guys can't just confront the Great Demon's army instead of them. Even after all of this, there are still 6 monsters left in that area. The hero who led the complaints is really serious about fighting. He laughs at the monsters in the area, labeling them weak and no match for him. Imagine telling him to back down because of these monsters. He uses his unique skill, Draconic Buster, on the monsters. Maybe he's not so weak after all, as the skill eliminates all the remaining monsters in the area. His unique skill goes up to level 4. He really backs up his talk with work. Next challenge, please. Meanwhile, there's another party in the Golden Monster area. Ayaka and her companions are dealing with enemies on their own not too far away. They're curious about the blast in the distance, but even more curious about the fallen enemies in front of them. They couldn't find out anything about these guys. As soon as they were cornered and couldn't escape, they committed suicide. They must have been faithful spies. Ayaka and her companions know that the goddess is out for them though. They conclude that the goddess might have sent these guys to take care of people from the group. They must be more careful from here on out. Meanwhile, Touka and his companions camp in one of the buildings in the Golden Monster area. Touka points out that he saw a shining light in the distance earlier. He's curious to know what it could have been. Saras says that it was most likely a fight between monsters. Wait a minute, monsters fight against themselves? According to Saras, if the golden-eyed monsters are made by different roots of all evil, they might fight against each other. Touka gets her explanation, but he still strongly feels that it could have been a fight between humans and monsters. Oh well, it's too late to try and investigate. For now, a good night's rest is in order. Sarah sleeps with thoughts of Touka being unhappy because she's just a boring high-class elf. She may have blurted out those words in her sleep because early the next morning, she's the topic of discussion between Touka and Eve. Touka understands why she would feel like that. She once told him stories about her past and how everyone was attracted to her beauty but repelled by her lack of sense of humor. That must be why she keeps remembering it in her sleep. Eve feels that Saras has enough charm and doesn't need the noble sense of humor. Finally, Touka and Eve get to the first floor of the building, the reason for their morning walk. Touka instructs Eve not to immediately show her face when the door opens. It could be dangerous. No wonder he left Saras in charge of Liz. They enter the room and it's right there, a human-faced monster. Rewind to the previous night, Touka and his companions analyze past events and draw up plans for future ones. They notice that the monsters around this area are very few. Maybe it's because they are getting closer to the Witch of Taboo's place. It could be that the monster's habitat is more in the periphery than in the center of the Golden Monster Zone. The warriors check to see if Liz is doing okay. The Dark Elf says she would be fine as long as Eve is fine. Besides, Saras already assured her that as long as Touka lives, they would get to their destination safely. Speaking of Saras, Eve talks about her admiration for the warrior elf. Eve might have the advantage when it comes to speed, strength, and skills, but Saras' intelligence is what makes her stand out from others. When that intelligence is combined with the power of the spirits, most warriors are no match for her. Saras tries to be modest, but Touka joins in on the praises, pointing out that she wouldn't lose to the Black Dragon Knights if she's at full power. On the contrary, Touka wins fights by not letting his opponents show their true strength. If it comes to a battle of swords, he would have to depend on Eve and Saras for his safety. As an example, he defeated Civet without letting him show his full strength. Since they're talking about strong people, Touka lets them know that he's done a little research on other strong warriors. In the country of Jonato, there's a woman called Kyria Gilstain. She's known as Jonato's saint and is the most powerful woman in Jonato. Besides her, a group known as the Four Revered Saints is a powerful group too. The eldest son and eldest daughter are the most powerful of the group. In the Mila Empire, the strongest person is the Mad Emperor. Very few people have seen him fight, so no one knows just how strong he is. But one thing is for certain, he's not an ordinary man. In Urza, the strongest person has to be Eve. Eve cuts in at this point. She's pretty strong, but the strongest person in Urza is the Dragon Slayer of the Magic Knights, a warrior that Eve respects. Wow. As for the Kingdom of Nea, Saras has that title, or at least she used to. Bakros used to have Civet Garland before Touka happened, while the Kingdom of Magnar has Sigurd Sigmus. Touka is really intrigued by the strong guys, and he asks questions about the strength of the 13 Cavalry of Alien. According to Eve, the 6th Cavalry is usually known as the strongest, but when it comes to strong individuals, Nyantan is generally known as the strongest. These are famous individuals who don't belong to any country. For example, the Drunken Sword Party, the White Walkers, and another unknown guy known as the Sword of Valor. That's everything she knows about the strongest guys. Before she ends the small talk, Eve reminds Touka of the one whom he should fear right now, the monsters. She warns him to flee the moment he comes across a human-faced monster, as these ones are not ordinary. Back to the present, Touka and Eve are in the room with the human-faced monster. They hide behind pillars because the monsters are too fast once their prey is in line of sight. They can't hide forever though. Touka tells Eve about his plan to kill the monster. Human-faced monsters can't hide their sadistic emotions at all, and this one doesn't look like it let them escape. They must think of something. At the moment, they stand no chance against the monster. Its reactions are too quick for them to defend against. They are probably still alive only because they are out of range, or because the sadistic monster is trying to tease them with death. The warriors are cornered and must think of something. Without thinking it through, Eve picks up a rock and throws it at the monster. She throws it so quickly, but the monster reacts with lightning speed that Touka can barely keep up with. Wait a moment, she may have just given Touka an idea. Touka notices Eve's throw together with the monster's reaction, and has an idea about how to beat the human-faced monster. He calls out Pigimaru and Slay, and Eve finally grasps what the young man has in mind. He offers to ride the horse and play the bait. After all, she's a better warrior and horse rider than him. While Eve saddles the horse, Touka prepares to combine with Pigimaru. The human-faced monster reacts to anyone within range of its attack, and it attacks at lightning speed. Its range of attack is a little wider than Touka's, which is why he needs to buy some time by using Eve as bait. Slay is very mobile and can match the monster's speed to escape its traps. From his experience, Touka knows that these monsters torture the weak by feeding on the emotions of despair. To stop the opponent's motion, it'd most likely aim at its legs. With Slay's speed and Eve's experience, the pair should be able to evade the monster's attacks, creating an opportunity for Touka to attack. The Fly King Squadron must be grateful for having a genius as their leader. Everything happened just as Touka predicted it. Meanwhile, Touka combines Pigimaru's tentacles into one, making it much faster than it used to be. The human-faced monster is now fully prepared to take down Eve and Slay, and it shifts in focus from Touka, creating the opportunity he seeks. He paralyzes the monster and uses Berserk on it. There's no higher form of torture. The monster doesn't last long before dying. The system notifies him of a level increase, confirming the monster's death. With that, Touka is sure that they've conquered all the human-faced monsters in the Golden Monster area. Eve comes to congratulate him for a job well done. but they can barely talk before a bright light comes out from the human-faced monster and goes into the air. Okay, that can't be good. It's a familiar technique to Touka, a signal that activates when one dies. Touka is correct, and the ground underneath begins to shake violently. Before long, the area is surrounded by monsters that are too many to count. Touka and Eve barely have enough time to go back upstairs before the monsters attack. It'd be better if it was just the normal monsters. Unfortunately, the ones attacking them are some of the human-faced monsters. They must have gotten the signal from their fallen comrade and are now fully prepared for war. The warriors break the news to their other companions. Touka announces that if they don't escape soon, they will become food for the human-faced monsters. Touka knows that he's the one with the best chance of survival, so he offers himself as bait. This is their only chance of survival, and the whole group knows. Even at that, Seros and Eve offer themselves as bait instead. Eve is the only one with knowledge of the witch's house. There's no way she would be put in danger. Also, it'd be easier to negotiate with the witch if Eve is present. And lastly, only one person there has abnormal skills that can inflict real damage on the monsters: Touka. Seros hands over a stone to Touka. It's the loudspeaker stone that he requested. She made it using materials from the human-faced monster. Well, that was fast. Touka puts it on and then instructs Seros to hide with Eve and Liz. Once the monsters start moving in large numbers, they must take advantage of the opportunity to escape. They say their goodbyes. For now, hopefully. Touka rides with Slay and Piggymaru to the area where the monsters gather. Touka passed some magic energy into the loudspeaker, and Piggy calls the attention of the monsters, making them focus on Touka alone. The plan works as the monsters start to advance towards him in large numbers. That's the cue. He can only hope his companions have used the opportunity to escape. The leading pack of the monsters look really fast. Touka isn't 100% sure about his chance of survival. Even at that, Slay and Piggymaru don't wish to abandon him. Loyal companions, these ones. Since they didn't abandon him, he promises to give his best to save his life and theirs. It's a full-scale war between the human-faced monsters and the abnormal state skill user. Will Touka survive this one, especially without any help from even Seros? How much attention would this battle draw, since the Fly King squadron isn't alone in the forest?
Mimori Touka continues to battle against the human-faced monsters in the forest. The monsters chase after him with sickles and other weapons which don't look like child's play. After putting some distance between them to ensure his safety, he uses his skill Berserk on them. The monsters within the skill attack range suddenly go haywire. The move makes them go completely nuts, such that they begin to attack each other, which is surely what they intended for them to do. Touka observes the movement of some of the leading pack, and he can deduce that these guys must have figured out his attack range. He decides to employ his other skills like Dark, Poison, and Paralyze. The reason for this action is that these attacks have a different effect range than the first one. However, after a while, the human-faced monsters also begin to read his moves and adapt to his attack range. These human-faced monsters are smarter than the average monster, and they show it during this battle by approaching him from different directions at once. This isn't to say that they've outsmarted Mimori Touka. In fact, all of these things are in keeping with Touka's schedule to reveal his trump card, his combination with Piggymaru. With everyone now so near and his attack range increased and strengthened, the human-faced monsters wouldn't be able to escape if they tried. Touka unleashes Paralyze and Berserk on the monsters. He also uses Poison and Sleep to kill them off as quickly as possible. Touka's combination with Piggymaru consumes a lot of MP just to maintain it. This is why he tried to make sure everything was right before using it. Touka's current show of skills is a fighting style that specializes in using killing combos on multiple targets with medium to long range attacks. Touka's skill, Poison, takes a lot of time to kill human-faced monsters, and since he needs them to die before his MP is drained, he's had to use the skill alongside deadly combos like Paralyze and Berserk. If a normal person tries to move during this combo, they would be damaged by the amount they move. Now imagine a human-faced monster with all that immense power trying to move. The damage that would be inflicted on the monster is enormous. The muscles of the body may be torn to shreds. Blood might begin to uncontrollably spurt from the veins. No matter how much they think they can resist it in the end, this move always ends up in one way: rain. But with the human-faced monster's blood. Touka checks his status and sees his level increase from 1903 to 1921 after the battle. He also notices that his MP has replenished. He decides to continue to use the MP he gains from defeating the monsters to level up, and replenish his regular MP. If this works out, it would theoretically mean that he could keep fighting for a long time without running out of MP. In the end, though, Touka's genius skills and plans are not without risks. Touka knows that if he's caught off guard and is hit even once, it could prove fatal. Touka isn't sure whether he can continue and sustain this method, but there's only one thing that keeps him going during times like these: the thought of the goddess getting rid of him as an E-class hero. If anything, he's more determined than ever to survive, and not just that, but to devastate everything and kill them all. Meanwhile, the forest is currently occupied by the heroes from the other world, Touka's classmates. They are all involved in the all-out war against the human-faced monsters. Survival for them is a little trickier than it proved for Mimori Touka. This would be a result of their difference in special skills. When a couple of human-faced monsters attack, Ayaka is the one who rises to the challenge. First of all, she asks Suo to clear out the area to prevent anyone from getting hurt. With the area all cleared out, Ayaka can now fight to her heart's content, and not let anyone interfere. Ayaka lives up to her billing, and manages to see off a few human-faced monsters that attack them. A little while after the battle, Ayaka goes to search out for her comrades. She sees Yasu on the way, but he's not exactly in the happiest of moods at the moment. Ayaka looks around and observes 2 human dead bodies, whom she recognizes as Hiruka and Sakuma, 2 of her classmates. Ayaka begins to question Yasu, asking why he failed to protect the people who were his responsibility, when the demon horde reared its ugly head. Ayaka fails to wrap her head around the deaths of these 2, and she questions Yasu until it gets to a point where he can't take the questions anymore. Yasu yells at Ayaka, pointing out she could use a lot of growth character-wise. He reveals that she always does this kind of thing without knowing, looking down on people so easily. According to him, it's been like that from the start. Ayaka simply looks down on people even though she doesn't know it. She does this with a pure and innocent face, but she still points out the difference between her power and that of others. While Yasu continues to yell, a third party steps onto the scene, smirking and calling out Yasu for being a loser. It's Kirihara Takuto, and he's here with Shogo. Kirihara criticizes Yasu's methods and results, taunting him by saying he's not the right vessel. He points out that no matter the feats Yasu might have accomplished in the past, if he doesn't have a large enough vessel like that of a king, then his success is only temporary. As a man with a small vessel, one might think he's achieved a lot and succeeded beyond his stature. However, that's only viewing it from one angle. Taking the perspective of the people with a king's vessel, which are big and strong, these achievements are not so much as impressive as they are pathetic. Yasu feels insulted by Kirihara's words, and Kirihara's comrade Shogo makes things much worse by deflating his ego. Shogo points out that Yasu doesn't have as much skill as he has a cocky attitude, and he's been carried away all this while. Kirihara tells Yasu that while overwhelming power is good to have, it is only good enough while residing in the body of a good vessel like him. Even though Yasu is ranked an A-class hero, Kirihara reveals there's no way he's a good vessel. Yasu can't take it anymore, and is prepared to fight for his ego and pride. Trouble is brewing among the heroes, but it's not arising from the human-faced monsters. Kirihara doesn't seem to have a problem with taking Yasu on. He calls him an unsalvageable loser, and we all know there's no coming back from that. Meanwhile, Yasu points out that Kirihara Takuto is the one who made some miscalculations before jumping to a conclusion. Yasu reminds Kirihara and Shogo that Ayaka is ranked an S-class hero, and yet has been unable to learn any special skills so far. Meanwhile, there's also Asagi, a B-class hero, who has learned a unique skill that beats the skills of many others. If there's anything to deduce from this, it means that a hero's rank is not truly what defines him. Kirihara Takuto has heard enough at this point, and tries to stop Yasu. He points out that he's completely aware that some S-class heroes don't deserve the ranks in which they're placed, and this drags down the spirit of the entire team. This sounds like an indirect insult to Ayaka, and she advises him to choose his words carefully. The other heroes show up, so Ayaka leaves the 2 men to continue whatever they think they're doing. While the monsters were attacking, Ayaka asked her comrades to retreat and leave it to her. The ones who retreated are finally back, and they head straight to meet Ayaka. Firstly, they tender their apologies to Ayaka, saying that even though they truly want to help, they're just not strong enough. Ayaka brushes it aside and points out that it's the thought that counts. Meanwhile, Asagi looks around and notices that Kirihara and Yasu are in a heated argument. She lets out a smirk and thinks out loud, saying she always predicted that those 2 wouldn't be on the best of terms. Ayaka calls out to Asagi and asks about Kashima. Meanwhile, Poppo is also not with the group. Asagi reveals that the girls used Poppo as bait, and had to escape from the monsters. Ayaka is shocked by the actions of her comrades. However, before she can scold them, they already anticipate that and start to point out just how terrified of monsters they are. After all, in moments like that, isn't it right that everyone prioritizes their life ahead of others? Ayaka still fails to comprehend their reasons, so the girls say that Ayaka is never truly going to understand them. Being born with a silver spoon in her mouth has made Ayaka very different from the rest of them. Ayaka is very upset, but she manages to keep her emotions in check. She walks over to Asagi and asks her to accompany her on a mission to go and find Kashima. Asagi, in her usual cheerful yet carefree demeanor, wishes Ayaka the best of luck, and she embarks on this mission alone. Ayaka is shocked that Asagi isn't prepared to rescue a member of her group, so Asagi decides to make it clear to her. While she admits that losing Kashima wouldn't be the best thing to do, she reveals that she already considered the risk of either losing one person or losing the entire group. If she decides to go after Kashima, she may end up losing more than one member of her group. In the end, Asagi advises Ayaka to leave the mission of finding Kashima to the 4 revered saints, people who are a lot stronger than they are, and are also aware of the surroundings of their world. Ayaka hears the explanation but doesn't agree with it. She announces that she intends to go and search for Kashima, even though it means that she would have to go on her own. However, one of the 4 revered saints cuts in and stops her from leaving. He announces that the 4 revered saints intend to search for Kashima one more time before sundown, so the others can rest easy. He also reveals that there's something very strange in the demon area today, so they must all be careful. Lastly, he ends the expedition for the day on account of the deaths which happened. Ayaka intends to join them in the search, but they don't mince words when they point out that she's too weak to accompany them. If she ends up coming with them, she would just be a liability and get in the way. They leave Ayaka alone to sulk about her weakness. Ayaka opens up her status bar and reveals she's level 143, which would be impressive compared to a lot of people. However, she bemoans her weakness and resolves to get stronger to protect everyone. Meanwhile, in some other part of the forest, Kashima breathes a heavy sigh of relief after escaping the monsters which had been chasing her. Thankfully, she left a few markings to guide her, even though they might not be enough. She recalls how weak she was when Touka was pushed to his death by the goddess. As much as she wanted to do something and intervene, all she could do was cower in fear. While she's come a long way since then, she still doesn't feel like she's strong enough. She mutters to herself that at her current rate she might die sooner than expected. Meanwhile, speaking of deaths, a were-leopard jumps down from the surrounding trees. It's Eve Speed, and Eve is surprised that she had just run into a different human in this area. Rewind a little bit. Eve Speed informs Ceres and Liz that she intends to go after Touka, while she admits that there's a high probability of her master's survival, as he wouldn't go into a battle without a plan to even the playing field. Eve isn't confident that even Touka can fight against an entire army of human-faced monsters and come out of the battle completely unscathed. Since she's not a human, Eve points out that there's a good chance she might be recognized as a monster and not be attacked by them. Also, disguise, concealment, and moving in such terrains are things she's very much used to. If it happens that Touka survives but is seriously injured along with Slay, then Eve Speed would be the only one who can carry them. It almost feels like all the conditions are aligned with her desire to go. Meanwhile, Ceres would also like to go, but she's very aware that they can't leave Liz unprotected. Since Liz also can't be taken to the battlefield, Ceres offers to stay and take care of her. Eve Speed says goodbye to her little sister, thanks Ceres, and then heads out to search for her master, Mimori Touka. Running out in the nighttime this way sort of reminds her of her time as a blood fighter. Eve Speed decides to give in to her beastly instincts just for one more night. After looking for a while, she can deduce that a great battle truly happened in the area. She keeps on looking, and she tries but fails to sense Touka's presence. She even tries to sense Pigimaru's presence, but she fails again, which isn't surprising this time, as Pigimaru's presence is usually more faint than Touka's. Suddenly, Eve senses something. The were-leopard draws her sword, but she realizes the creature around her isn't a monster. She goes to check it out and sees a human girl on the ground trembling. Eve Speed tries to inform the girl that she has no malicious intent. However, when she reaches out to take the girl's hand, she's attacked by a whole different person from the trees. It's Itsuki, another human that Eve Speed isn't familiar with. Boy, is she running into the wrong humans today. Itsuki sends a stage 1 lightning shifter attack straight at Eve Speed, but she manages to react and stop the attack in time. Itsuki is left shocked by this, as her big sister had previously assured her that only an S-class hero would be able to stop such an attack. Itsuki doesn't relent, as she figures out that from a closer distance it would be even more difficult for Eve Speed to do anything about the attack. She sends a stage 2 lightning shifter attack, and the skill hits the right spot this time. Well, if you call Eve's throat the right spot. Eve is left bewildered, and the lightning's impact on her throat currently impairs her voice box, so she's condemned to silence for now. Itsuki draws her sword and forbids Eve Speed from touching Kashima. It's her big sister's orders, according to her. Kashima is delighted to see Itsuki swooping in to save her. Meanwhile, Eve Speed remains shocked, pun intended, by Itsuki's lightning attack. She analyzes the move and realizes that the lightning didn't affect Kashima. There's also no thunder, so the lightning is surely not naturally occurring. Then it hits her. She realizes that this lightning shifter must be Itsuki's skill. Seeing all that has happened also leads her to correctly deduce that both Itsuki and Kashima are heroes from the other world. Eve realizes that the lightning is much more effective at close range, so the first thing she should do is put some distance between them. Itsuki is stunned by Eve's speed's ability to still move after taking 2 powerful hits. However, she doesn't intend to let the monster get away. Now it looks like Eve is running and Itsuki is in hot pursuit. Eve knows that she has to put some distance between them, so she uses her anticipation skill, a skill which makes use of her sharp eyes and fast processing to anticipate an opponent's next move and stop her before she can make it. Anticipation is brought about by her experience as a warrior, her decision-making ability in the heat of the moment, as well as her instincts as a beast. Eve's anticipation doesn't seem to be enough to stop Itsuki from constantly launching attacks. Eve realizes that Itsuki's power is not just a result of her speed, her fighting power and skills are also commendable. Even though her skills could use a little brushing up, she also executes them to a very high standard. Eve's speed admits that her opponent is a combination of wildness and intellect, and that's not the ideal opponent one would like to fight against. Meanwhile, the admiration goes both ways during the battle. Itsuki assesses Eve's speed and wonders how she can still move after being on the receiving end of some of her best moves. According to Itsuki, she's been using the golden attack pattern that her big sister introduced to her. Even at that, she has failed to finish Eve off so far. Itsuki deduces that this must mean she's not strong enough, or her big sister made a mistake. Since Itsuki has put her big sister on such a high pedestal, it's very easy for her to conclude that it's she who's not good enough. This conclusion, however, makes her more angry, and makes her fight with more spirit. Eve's speed notices this, and looks at Itsuki as one who goes on to become stronger during fights. Meanwhile, their battle goes on until after a while, Itsuki finally finds an opening to strike with her sword. With a small distance between them, Eve's speed is caught off guard and is helpless against the attack. Itsuki is about to deliver the final blow with her sword, when a voice calls out and asks for her to stop. It's her big sister, and she respects the call and puts away her sword immediately. Kashima is safe, which is surely their priority at the moment. Itsuki asks to know why her sister doesn't want her to finish off the beaten monster in front of her. Her big sister reveals that the monster in front of them is very different from the others they've encountered. For starters, this is more of a panther than a lioness. She goes on to reveal that creatures of this kind are highly intelligent. She also reveals that they're even more similar to humans than the monsters they've encountered so far, in terms of behavior and intelligence. This would imply that the beast in front of them has the ability to communicate with them on some level. Itsuki wonders why the beast hasn't said anything so far, so her big sister points out that it's very possible her unique skill has damaged the vocal cords of the creature, rendering it unable to say anything. How did she know this? Even though Eve's speed hasn't said anything so far, Itsuki's big sister, who eventually introduces herself as Hijiri Takao, reveals that she's noticed Eve's speed's gestures, and they're not different from those of creatures that can speak with humans. Then again, even if it turns out that Eve can't speak, Hijiri Takao points out that judging a person's intelligence based on their ability to speak isn't the smartest thing to do. Hijiri apologizes to Eve's speed on her sister's behalf. She reveals that she can't feel any malicious intent from Eve, so she's sure the fight came from a little misunderstanding and presumption from her sister Itsuki. She also asks Itsuki to apologize to Eve, and of course Itsuki obeys her. Hijiri Takao commends Itsuki for not using Kashima as an excuse for what she did, and she also admits that she didn't give the clearest of orders either, so she also has some fault in this. Now that the apologies are out of the way, there's only one thing left to do: get acquainted with each other. Hijiri Takao reveals that she would like to ask Eve a couple of questions. If she still can't speak, Hijiri provides her with the option of responding to her questions using simple gestures. Hijiri then asks Eve's speed if she has any animosity towards them, and Eve's speed raises her left hand, indicating she doesn't. When Hijiri asks if Eve's speed won't have any problem with them leaving, she raises her right hand. After Eve is done answering, Hijiri tells her that those are all of her questions, and that she's just there to bring Kashima back, not to fight her. Eve's speed notes that Hijiri is similar to Touka, but different in her own way, so she wonders who the lady is. She also observes that Hijiri is emotionally unwavering, unpredictable, and her instincts tell her that Hijiri is not a person she can deceive. Under the circumstances, she is forced to accept Hijiri's proposal and part ways. Eve's speed suddenly hears a rustle in the bushes, but before she can react, a one-eyed monster charges at her. However, Hijiri, who is faster, uses her wind magic on the monster, destroying it immediately. Eve's speed is shocked that Hijiri was aware of the monster behind her, and Hijiri's first move was invisible to her sharp beast eyes. She is conflicted, because even though the effects of the electric shock she was hit with still remain, she can't believe she could react so late, and the only one she knows who could stand up to someone like Hijiri is Saris. After the monster is defeated, Itsuki praises Hijiri, saying the stronger she gets, the less she feels she'll ever reach Hijiri's level. Eve's speed remembers that the students who were summoned alongside Touka all believe he's dead, and even Touka talks as if he doesn't want them to know of his existence. So Eve's Speed decides it would be unwise for her to mention anything about him. Suddenly, Eve's Speed speaks up, saying that she's looking for her master, and Itsuki is surprised that she's able to speak. She says that she would have felt guilty for the rest of her life if Eve's Speed had lost her voice because of her. Eve apologizes for reaching out to Kashima so carelessly. Hijiri tells Eve that the human master she's looking for must be a good lord, and Eve confirms. Takao tells her that her master is indeed human after all, and Eve is shocked because she answered Hijiri's question so thoughtlessly. Eve decides it's best to end the conversation before saying anything else, so she begins to leave and tells Hijiri that she is in a hurry. She asks if the agreement they made earlier still stands. Hijiri nods in agreement and also apologizes for being so inquisitive. Then Hijiri tells Eve her name, but mentions she's sure Eve already knew that. As a courtesy, Eve also shares her name. Hijiri explains she assumed Eve was Eve's Speed because she had heard tales of a were-leopard blood warrior that disappeared, so she predicted Eve is the one most suited to the information. Hijiri then assures Eve that she has no intention of telling anyone about their meeting that day. Eve tells Hijiri she would never forget her name. Hijiri uses that opportunity to tell Eve's Speed that she is still very interested in her master, because the fact that she is searching for him means that she is convinced her master would survive, despite being caught in the Great Migration. She also tells Eve that the human-faced species that were mixed with the Great Migration are tough nuts to crack, even for the four revered saints and the followers of Visus, and only the former mankind strongest or Visus herself would be able to defeat them unscathed. So in other words, her master is someone who can survive these monsters. Eve's Speed tells her that she appreciates her insights, but lets her know that her master isn't someone that can be measured with a simple yardstick like hers. As the human-faced species keeps chasing after Touka, he continues to strategize on how to defeat them. He discusses the strategy of killing monsters to gain experience and leveling up in small increments. Every time he levels up, his MP increases, maintaining the fusion state with Pigimaru, which constantly consumes MP and continues the battle. He knows it's a reckless strategy, but it's the only way for him to survive. He receives a system notification that his skill Berserk has increased, but he hesitates to use it because he believes it's difficult to use in this melee battle. As he rides, he keeps using every skill in his arsenal to take down some of the monsters he can. He says that Paralyze and Berserk are an excellent combo, but Berserk still can't perform wide area attacks. In those situations, it's best he uses Poison for applying continuous damage to multiple targets. Touka also talks about how Dark is the skill that requires the fewest number of letters to pronounce, and how he'll survive using all the skills in his arsenal. Soon enough, Touka's horse, Slay, begins to slow down due to the pain in its foot, and not long after, Touka gets encircled. Touka apologizes to Slay and Pigimaru, asking if they can do one last job for him, a question they acknowledge with sounds. He sizes up the monsters and sees a fast-moving melee-type wolf, a four-legged creature with mid-range spear attacks, and a long-range light ray-emitting monster. The monsters charge at him, and he believes that if he uses Berserk to provoke them to fight each other, the enemy's side would be easily destroyed. Before long, the short-ranged wolf and the mid-ranged four-legged creature kill the long-ranged one, and then turn on each other. After he finishes all of the monsters, he receives a notification that a higher-level skill of the skill Paralyzed has been unleashed. He checks the name of the skill on his system board and sees it's called Slow. Touka continues to apologize to Pigimaru and Slay for pushing them too hard. He decides to continue his journey and meets up with Ceres and the others. He mentions that if they follow the trail of corpses, they'll eventually make it back. Suddenly, Touka finds himself surrounded by remnants of monsters, but there are no human-faced monsters among them. He decides to test the new Slow skill he just acquired. Upon activating the skill, he realizes it depletes his MP at a tremendous rate, comparable to when he is connected to Pigimaru or even higher. As the monster attacks, he then realizes that everything around him is moving so slowly, and yet he can move normally. Touka then calls on Pigimaru and Slay, and they respond to him. At that moment, he realizes that Pigimaru and Slay are probably not slowing down, maybe because they're in close proximity to him, and that he'll have to verify a lot of things. He tries to activate his Dark, Berserk, and Poison skills alongside the Slow skill, but he immediately receives a notification that overlapping usage of skills is not permitted, which means that the Slow skill can only be used alone. He then assumes that the Slow skill can be used in various ways depending on how well he can use it. Touka almost gets his head ripped off by a monster that closes in on him, but suddenly regains its normal speed. Touka then realizes that the skill has a disadvantage. If something or someone gets within radius, the slowness disappears. Additionally, the new skill can affect any target within range, even if the target is not in sight. It is best used in situations where the user doesn't want to be taken by surprise or when they want to escape from the attacker's range. It can be used for various purposes, and the fact that it decreases from the maximum value means that the effects last until his 5000 MP becomes 0, but it cannot be used continuously. This only means that useful powers actually have limitations. Touka believes that he has finally understood the nature of slow to some extent. Before long, Touka begins to feel weak and collapses to the ground. He knows that his MP may be restored, but his strength can't carry him any longer. He suddenly loses all consciousness and closes his eyes. The next time he reopens them, he sees himself riding on the back of Eve's Speed, who is happy that she found him at last. He closes his eyes again, and the next time he opens them, he finds himself in a cave with Ceres in front of him. Ceres tells him that she is relieved he's alive. Touka then asks about the well-being of Slay and Pikimaru, and Ceres informs him they're safe. Eve's Speed arrives and is relieved to see that Touka is awake. She informs him that she has examined his body and found no serious injuries. Then she reveals that while searching for him, she encountered heroes from another world. Touka is surprised to learn that the Class 2C students were in the forest, speculating that they were there to hunt the golden-eyed monsters and gain experience. He remarks that Eve was fortunate to only encounter Hijiri and Itsuki, as encountering any others would have been dangerous. Eve's Speed agrees, acknowledging that Hijiri was indeed a reasonable person. Touka tells Eve's Speed that she was right to not reveal his name, and he warns her that now they're in the same vicinity with his classmates from 2C, they might run into each other again. Touka then notes to himself that he can foresee his former classmates as a potential obstacle in his quest for vengeance against the goddess, and it is likely that they'll fight against him in one way or another. But until he has the forbidden spell that might be a countermeasure against the goddess's magic that nullifies all abnormal skills, he needs to make sure every one of his classmates believes he is dead. Touka tries to stand up, but Ceres tells him not to because his wound isn't shallow. She suggests that he lay down for a while. Touka praises her ability to treat wounds and her extensive knowledge about the world. He mentions that she can use the power of spirits as well as the sword, and she's also skilled at horse riding. He wonders what more he could possibly ask for. She then smiles at him and modestly calls herself just a boring high elf. Touka, however, tells her that he's grateful to have her no matter what she thinks of herself, and then she thanks him for the compliment. Touka tells Ceres that the way she tends to him is reminiscent to how he would feel if he had a big sister. Ceres is surprised that he's calling her big sister. She asks him his age, and he tells her 17. She's somewhat taken aback to find out he's younger than her. Touka explains that it's plausible because high elves live for a long time, but Ceres clarifies she's only 19. Touka is shocked and blurts out that he thought she would have lived for 100 years or more. Ceres then explains that while elves have longer active muscle periods, some look and age similarly to humans, meaning the relationship between age and appearance is almost the same for elves as it is for humans. Touka then asks Ceres how old she thought he was, and she tells him that she thought he was in his early to mid-20s because he's too calm. Touka then asks her if this means he's going to be treated like a little brother from now on, and Ceres clarifies that she won't treat him that way because he is the king of the Fly King Squadron, and she has no intention of changing her attitude towards the king to whom she swore her allegiance, even if he is younger than her. Touka suddenly closes his eyes and smiles, and Ceres asks him if he can't sleep, and he tells Ceres that he can't because his nerves are too excited. Ceres then tells Touka that she hopes what she's about to do will calm his nerves. She recalls how her aunt used to let her lay on her lap for a long time ago. Ceres then places Touka's head on her lap and tells him to not keep his struggles to himself. Touka asks her if he looked like he was having a hard time, and Ceres responds that when the demons attacked all at once, Touka had the attitude that he was fully capable of defeating them, so much so that even Eve's Speed and Liz were assured by his attitude. However, sometimes she gets scared that one day he would place too much of a burden on himself, and that she is also afraid that he would suddenly break down. Touka tells her that he is probably already past the worst situation he can think of, and that he is not made to break so easily. Ceres tells him that maybe that's just what he thinks, but Touka tells her that if she really cares about him, then he would need her to support him the best she can. Ceres agrees to do so, and tells Touka to leave it all to her. After a while, Ceres notices that Touka isn't speaking anymore, and asks if he's sleeping. She then touches his head to feel his temperature. Ceres mentions that Touka overcame the abandoned ruins with just his own power, and escaped from that nightmare for vengeance. Yet now, as he sleeps, he looks so innocent. She says she has never seen him so defenseless before, and she never thought she could feel the way she's feeling towards someone. She then touches his chest and gets startled, telling herself that it's best that she sleeps too. After laying Touka's head on the ground, she leans down and kisses him. Kashima thanks Itsuki for protecting her, and Itsuki tells her to not be so formal when addressing her. Hijiri tells Kashima that even in a place like this world, Her behavior and actions haven't changed at all from what they were in the previous world. Hijiri also tells her that humans are creatures that should change even when they're not transported to another world. Itsuki then advises Kashima to get out of Asagi's group, since she looks like she fits in better with the class president. Kashima then has a flashback of how Asagi mistreats her teammates and exerts her influence over them. She surprisingly tells Itsuki that she wants to remain in Asagi's group. Itsuki tells her that she doesn't feel good about Asagi, and Kashima says that she knows that, but she can't leave Asagi's group because it might save Sogo someday. Itsuki is curious about what she means, and Kashima says that she knows Asagi thinks she's an idiot, and since Asagi knows that she is scared of her, she is sure she can never disobey her. She knows that one day Asagi would let her guard down and tell her about important plans somewhere in the future. And if Asagi tries to do something to endanger Sogo's life, she, who is closest to Sogo, would be the first to tell them about it. Hijiri smiles and tells Kashima that it seems they were right to come looking for her. She then informs Kashima that the goddess has sent a detachment to the expedition without informing them. Hijiri speculates that the goddess probably intended to inflict a psychological burden on Sogo by causing the deaths of her valued comrades. She suggests that the goal might be to brainwash Sogo and mold him into the kind of hero she desires, ultimately making him an obedient pawn. Kashima is shocked by the news, and asks how the goddess could do such a terrible thing, given that she was the one who summoned them. Hijiri responds by expressing a doubt that even if they fulfill the conditions for their return to the human world, which is overthrowing the great demon emperor, the goddess may not simply let them go. After Kashima returns to camp, her classmates, including Sogo, are happy to see her. Kashima informs everyone that she was saved all thanks to the Takao sisters. However, Kirihara interrupts, complaining that they should all be aware they've wasted his precious time by disappearing on their own, and that the only decent S-rank student is Hijiri. He then demands that Hijiri and Itsuki come work under him or join the dropouts. Itsuki insults him by asking if there are maggots in his head. Kirihara retorts that she shouldn't make him repeat himself because he has simply realized that he's so powerful he will soon become a king. Itsuki counters by reminding him that she doesn't want to be told what to do by someone who has lost to her several times in the final exams. Kirihara tries to touch Hijiri, while telling her that her sister isn't well disciplined, but Itsuki slaps his hand away and asks him not to touch her big sister. Kirihara tells Itsuki that he will show them the difference in their powers, and she won't get away with it lightly, and Itsuki dares him to try it. Both of them seem ready to attack each other until they're interrupted by Kayako, who threatens to beat them up if they don't stop fighting amongst themselves. Kirihara gets annoyed and leaves, saying that because of good guys like the Takao sisters interfering, the number of insolent, low-spec people who misunderstand the situation keeps increasing. Hijiri thanks Itsuki for standing up for her. Another one of their classmates rides in on a horse, informing them that a messenger on a fast horse from a lion was dispatched to their encampment near the border of the demon zone. They learn that the army of the Great Demon Emperor, which has recently been quiet, has finally begun a massive southward advance. Elsewhere, the Fly King squadron continues their journey through the forest, noticing how huge the trees around the area look. Eve Speed notes that it's unbelievable that they haven't spotted any signs of monsters, and wonders if they've already entered the witch's realm. Nyantan is seen in a private meeting with Visis, the goddess. Nyantan gives Visis updates about how the heroes from the other world have fared so far, especially after being sent to the Golden-Eyed Monster area. Even though there were a few unexpected events, Visis was satisfied with their success in raising the overall level of the heroes. Nyantan tells her about the 2 B-rank heroes who lost their lives, but Visis truly couldn't care less about insignificant factors like that. However, Visis wonders aloud and asks Nyantan why Sogo Ayaka's friends are still alive. Nyantan admits there's a possibility that someone interfered with their plans regarding Sogo's friends. Visis also asks about Hijiri Takao and her sister Itsuki. She expresses concern about the level of freedom she's given to the Takao sisters so far, and she hopes that they haven't made any moves that could prove damaging in the future. Nyantan assures the goddess that everything is fine, and that the Takao sisters are simply steadily growing like most other heroes from the other world. Visis revisits the topic of Ayaka Sogo's friends. While she does this, she forcefully bends Nyantan's head and inserts her fingers into her mouth. Nyantan winces in pain and the goddess is loving it. She makes it clear that in this world, people don't learn unless they get hurt, and that she doesn't want to be on the side that's being hurt. Meanwhile, in the northwest city of Argyle in the kingdom of Magnar, there is panic and chaos all over the city. The whole place is up in flames and people are running helter-skelter. The former commander of the White Wolf Knights, Marg Nog, reveals that the south and east cities have already fallen to this same attack, so no one should expect incoming help anytime soon. He explains that the strategy of the enemies is to attack the east, west, and south at the same time, Invading all three directions at once seems to be a strategy which has brilliantly paid off. Margnog reveals that the units are no longer concerned with the evacuation of civilians from the city, and he orders that all units should fall back and retreat to Sisibapa until they come up with a solution. The Argyle soldiers are more than willing to fight, but their battle strength has been automatically weakened by the evil element possessed by the enemy. The evil element is the evil energy that the Great Demon Emperor possesses. As the demons of the Great Demon Emperor attack, they release the evil element. Anyone within range of this evil element would be affected. Body movement would slow down, and even using a single magical element would require more energy than usual. Even with the evil element against them, the soldiers are still hopeful that the likes of Sogyo, the continent's only divine magic sword wielder, and the White Wolf Knights won't be defeated by these demons. Margnog shares his soldiers' optimism, but he also points out that Sogyo would surely be affected by the evil element. Their last hope, if they truly have any, would be the heroes from another world, who are thought to be unaffected by this element. Just then, an unmarked wagon comes in at full speed. Curious as who they are, they don't wait long before they find out who is on the wagon. On close inspection, they realize that the people in the wagon are the previously evacuated citizens, who should be headed towards Sisibapa by now. The escapees are all dead. It looks like a message from the demon army to abandon all hope. As if things aren't bad enough, the soldiers guarding the walls of the city reveal the loud noise they heard earlier, which they thought to be reinforcements from Sisibapa. In reality, it is a large force of enemy soldiers approaching their gates. Suddenly, a monstrous creature with wings like a bat and goat-like horns comes flying in. The creature introduces himself as Drykuva, and he reveals he's a loyal servant to the Great Demon Emperor and the third of the Sworn. As if to mock them, he encourages the humans not to give up hope, but to fight willfully for their survival. Then he promises that the moment the humans lose hope is when they will be mercilessly trampled on by the Great Demon Emperor's army. Meanwhile, the Allied forces are presently engaged in a war meeting. They talk about the consequences of the Great Demon Emperor's decision to attack from all sides. They conclude that the scale of this attack is much larger than the other attacks in the past. If there were ever a time to reveal trump cards, now would be it. As a consequence, after returning from the golden-eyed monster area, the heroes from another world depart the castle of Aelion and set out to the kingdom of Magnar for battle. While the battle rages on, Mimori Touka and his companions are a step closer to achieving their goals, having successfully found the place where the Witch of Taboos, Erica Anarvale, resides. They must now find a way to convince her to let them in for a start. Touka completely opens up to Erica about how the goddess abandoned him to the ruins. After finding out how weak he was, he tells the story of how he battled to survive and continue his search for the forbidden spell which one could use to defeat the goddess. Erica Anarvale finds it a bit difficult to believe that Touka didn't just survive, but found a way to kill the human-faced monsters. She's also shocked that someone like Touka could use strange magic to restrict the movements of her handmade golems which served to protect her. Touka tells her it wasn't cast magic or a spell, but it was the power of a hero from another world. Seeing as he's the goddess's outcast, the Witch of Taboos gets a clearer picture as to how he's made it this far. Erica Anarvale seeks to know the true purpose of their visit. Touka reveals that there are two reasons why they've searched far and wide for the Witch of Taboos. Firstly, the leopardkin Eve Speed and the dark elf Liz require protection. Touka tells Erica that if she can't offer Eve and Liz protection, then they may be condemned to a life on the run. Erica asks why he didn't seek protection for himself and the high elf Ceres. Touka informs the witch that he doesn't intend to stay for a long time. Once he's attained his second purpose along with Ceres, he intends to continue on his way. To lower her suspicions, he also reveals that he doesn't intend to spread rumors about her once he leaves, as starting speculations concerning the Witch of Taboos wouldn't benefit him in any way. Erica is intrigued so far, and she seeks to know the other reason for Touka's visit. That's when Touka lets the words fly. Forbidden curses. He holds a book up and reveals that he picked it up from the ruins. His best guess for interpreting the strange book was to find someone who knew a lot about taboos. Erica directly questions whether he seeks this power to be able to defeat the goddess of Aelion. Without mincing words, Touka admits to this. However, the Witch of Taboos doesn't just let out her secrets. She reveals that she's not completely sure whether the young man standing in front of her is the right person to share her knowledge of forbidden curses with. Erica Anarvale looks down and spots Eve again. She asks whether Eve is of the Speed tribe. Eve replies that she's indeed the daughter of Idem Speed. This takes the witch by surprise, as she used to know Idem Speed very well. Erica asks about the well-being of Idem and Pakwi, and she's surprised to learn that the father and mother of Eve's Speed are gone. She instantly apologizes for bringing up the matter, but Eve has no problem with it. Eve Speed opens up about how while growing up, her father gave her a map and asked her to use it to find the Witch of Taboos if she is ever in need of help. Erica admits to hearing news about the destruction of the Speed tribe. Eve talks about how the tribe was going strong at a point in time, and was suddenly destroyed the next morning, leaving her to wander the continent as the sole survivor. It was during her wandering that she found her little sister Liz, who was wandering just like her. Erica asks Liz for her last name, but the Dark Elf has no idea what it might be. She reveals that she used to lead a quiet life in a Dark Elf settlement in the forest, which suddenly got destroyed one day by people claiming to be cavalry from Aelion, the same Aelion where the goddess Visis is in charge. Erica clenches her teeth in disgust concerning the goddess. Liz goes on to talk about how she managed to survive and become a wanderer until she met her older sister, Eve. She also mentions that just when they were both in huge trouble again, Touka saved and freed both of them. Erica admits that under normal circumstances, she wouldn't allow them into her abode, but there's no way she can turn away an elf from her tribe who lost her home, as well as the daughter of Item Speed. However, before she agrees to let them in, she points out that everything that happened since they met Touka may simply be a brilliant plan to gain their trust and make them lead him to the Witch of Taboos. In other words, there's a possibility they've just been used by Touka. Eve, Speed, and Liz react indifferently, even after learning about the possibility of being used. They point out that Touka has sacrificed a great deal for them at this point. In truth, both Eve, Speed, and Liz do not mind being used by Touka. Erica is surprised by their response, but as she has nothing else to say, she invites all of them into her home. Touka can barely hide the grin on his face. He recalls Erica asking if he wanted the power of forbidding curses to defeat the goddess of Aelion. If anything, that has just confirmed his theory that his knowledge of these curses should be enough. The first hurdle is cleared. Now, it's on to the next. The Witch of Taboos, Erica Anervale, takes them in, but she is still curious as to how Touka defeated the Soul Eater, killed the Black Dragon Knights, and the one known as humanity's strongest, destroyed the Ashinto sorcerer group, and defeated the monsters in the Golden-Eyed monster area. She's eager to understand how he survived all of these with just his abnormal state skills. She's aware that these skills are known to be useless in terms of success rate, sustainability, and efficacy, which is why they're tagged examples of the failure frame. With Touka's companions settled in, she asks about Touka's desire to take revenge on Visis. Touka reveals that Visis has the Dispel Bubble, which is why he figured that he must learn the taboos to stand a chance of defeating her in battle. Erica Anervale reveals that other than the Dispel Bubble, Visis possesses extraordinary individual fighting powers. According to rumors, Visis even succeeded in brainwashing the Soul Eater, so she's surely more than a little crazy. Erica explains that the Golden-Eyed Demon is the creation of the Great Demon Emperor, who is the root of all evil. The original form of the human-faced monster is a golden-eyed demon, and since there were no human-faced monsters in the army of the Great Demon Emperor, some form of mutation must have occurred. Now, the condition for a mutation to a human-faced monster would probably be eating a human being. Touka understands that much, as he's very perceptive. This theory leads them to deduce that Visis must have fed brainwashed humans to the golden-eyed monsters. After doing this by sacrificing lots of people over some time, that must have been how she was able to control the Soul Eater and place it at the exit of the disposal ruins. After their chat, Erica Anervale admits that she's starting to come around to Touka, but it's still up to him to earn her trust during his stay there. She also points out that he has a wound on his left shoulder, and she intends to let him heal from that injury first. Before going, she makes a side comment, saying Visis might have made a terrible mistake by attempting to dispose of her most formidable adversary yet. The Witch of Taboos leaves the room, and Touka's companions are free to talk about how glad they are that she's a good person. Saris also points out that from Erica's body language, she can tell that she's not the biggest fan of the goddess either. Meanwhile, Touka reminds Saris that they will be sharing a room with only one bed this time, as there are only 2 free rooms in the house. While Liz and Eve Speed got one, the other is to be shared by Touka and Saris. Saris panics and blushes, before stating that Touka is her king, and she belongs by his side. She also says that she's given him all of herself to do as he pleases. Later that night, neither Touka nor Saris can sleep comfortably. Saris whispers that sharing the bed with Touka is the first time she shared a bed with anyone other than her father. Touka says it's the same for him, so she wonders how he's remained calm so far. Touka teases her, saying she's not the only one who can remain calm in these situations. He also reveals that there's something else that keeps him calm, but he'll tell her when he feels the time is right. Saris looks forward to it, and she also admits that she has something to tell him when the time is right. There is silence for a while as they try to sleep again. Touka breaks the silence by telling her to be more confident in herself, as she has a likable personality. alongside being beautiful to the opposite sex. He tries telling her about the opposite sex he likes most in this world, but Ceres's cheeks are already too flushed and she's about to lose control. She pleads with Touka to use sleep on her, and Touka agrees to do so, and she falls asleep in a matter of seconds. Touka watches her sleep and admits that she's a peculiar one, before falling asleep himself. Meanwhile, the armies of the Allied forces are still on their way to fight against the Great Demon Emperor's army. This army, the South Counter-Invasion Force, looks intimidating when seen up close. The human side was divided into 3 groups, just like the Demon Emperor's army. The West Counter-Invasion Force will be led by Ikusaba's group, the Drunken Sword Party, and the army led by the Holy Saint. The Takao sisters, Nyantan, and the Aelion Cavalry are designated to handle the East Counter-Invasion Force, and the White Knights, or Magnar, were also incorporated into it. Ayaka Sogo's group, Kirihara's group, Yasu's group, Banewolf, the Dragon Slayer, and the 4 revered saints have all been placed in the South Counter-Invasion Force, and the goddess of Aelion is with them. Meanwhile, Ayaka Sogo looks a little off, and Suo seeks to know what's wrong. Suo also reveals that she's a little worried about the power gap between the rest of the group, including herself and Sogo. Sogo reassures Suo that she'll do her best to protect all her 2C classmates. Visis cuts in, saying that Sogo might as well learn some unique skills while she's doing that. She mentions that it's not just for her sake, but for national pride, as it's embarrassing to have an S-class who doesn't have any unique skills. Sogo apologizes to the goddess for not learning anything so far. Banewolf cuts in, and says that Sogo is trying her best. He also points out that her squad has shown massive growth, including Suo, so Sogo should be regarded as a force to be reckoned with. Visis then implies that Banewolf might have a crush on Sogo. Sogo lights a cigarette and fails to deny this. Instead, he points out that the goddess has been a little over the edge since the appearance of the Great Demon Emperor. Visis rides ahead of them. Banewolf puts out his cigarette and encourages Sogo even more, asking her to let others help her. While she's grateful for the encouragement, she's unhappy that Banewolf simply littered his cigarette stick. She recalls her days in the other world when she used to stop people from littering. That aside, she asks if the Demon Emperor's appearance truly bothers Visis that much. Banewolf admits that the true reason might be the annihilation of the Black Dragon Knights, alongside humanity's strongest, Civet Gartland. If only Civet were still alive, the goddess might have comfortably cut down the number of heroes a little more. He reveals that one of Visis's greatest fears is that the heroes might become too strong and too difficult to control, hence the need to cull them to a controllable number. However, culling them is a little dangerous before the Demon Emperor is defeated. The whereabouts of the Ashinto Knights remains unknown, and so does the true strength of the Demon Emperor's army. All of these uncontrollable factors must be combined to give Visis a real headache. Meanwhile, Visis rides ahead to meet Kirihara, who proudly asks whether the stage is set to show his true strength. Visis says they can't reveal their trump card Kirihara so easily. At a level 279, Kirihara is at least 50 levels ahead of the next highest Hijiri. This gives him the confidence to call himself the strongest, even among those in S-class. Meanwhile, a message comes in that the monsters in the East Invasion army are increasing rapidly. Visis says that they wouldn't have kept their true number hidden for so long, and she rules out teleportation devices because she knows that such a trump card would have been used more effectively. In the end, there's only one conclusion that makes sense. These demons are being created on the spot, which means the Great Demon Emperor has truly returned. Meanwhile, Touka and his companions remain at the house of the Witch of Taboos. They look well settled in at this point. Erika and Eve walk in, but they notice that Eve now wears a band on her arm. Erika asks Touka to put some magic into the armband and see what happens. When he does it, it transforms Eve's speed into a pretty human lady. Erika reveals it's a special armband she made for Eve's father and all members of the Speed clan. The bracelet can transform all leopardkin into human form. Eve finds her new human body a little difficult to adjust to. It's very uncomfortable being so hairless and naked, so she understands why humans wear clothes. Erika reveals that her parents were too kind at times, so she made something like that to enable them to coexist with humans even after their clan is destroyed. Eve has to relearn the concept of maintaining balance on her feet without her tail. While she's at it, Touka asks her to teach him how to use a sword, as Ceres is occupied with teaching him horse riding. With Eve's new form, she still retains more than 90% of her normal powers. Amazingly, Erika reveals that changing the percentage of magic embedded in the armband can also bring back some of her leopardkin features. However, they all agree it would be best for her to remain in human form for now. So Touka goes off to learn horse riding and sword fighting from Ceres and Eve. As special as he is, these new skills prove challenging for him. Thankfully, it was never meant to be a one-day job. A little while later, he cools off by reading the Book of the Forbidden Arts. He reads the book during every bit of spare time he has, and Erika is a little curious. She asks, and he confirms that he found the book at the disposal ruins. She requests to see it, and she confirms that this is a sign of her new trust in him. Reading it, she says the book would have changed a lot in this world if it got out. Also, she finds out that Anglin Bathrad, the great sage who owned the book, defeated the root of all evil but never returned to his world. Instead, he was sent to the disposal ruins and couldn't defeat the Soul Eater. Reading the book, she also discovers that Piggy is different from other slimes, because it's been strengthened with the knowledge from the book. The book reveals that Anglin successfully carried out the same experiment due to his hero skills. With his antidote skills, Anglin hardly had to sacrifice any monsters during his experiments. Erica admits that these scribbles in the book are too valuable, and they're based on a realm she can't enter, meaning it's probably an experiment based on the unique abilities of the heroes. Touka has some materials on the table, and he reveals to Erica that they're used to make tools from the Book of the Forbidden Arts. While he's already made a few tools, he would like to make the Pigimaru Monster Enhancement Potion. Touka reveals that he's only missing one material to enable him to make the potion. After checking the book and his available ingredients, Erica reveals that coincidentally, she has the last ingredient with her.